Chapter 1464. Dustless muttered to himself in an extremely ridiculous tone. He wasn't a simple person like Kusanagi Tatsuki. He knew that even if this guy died now, he would still be resurrected due to his special ability. Not only Dustless, but Athena also understood. This guy is just taking advantage of the situation. Athena's tone turned cold. She felt that her intelligence had been insulted. If she didn't know about Perseus's ability, it would be fine, but she also knew that Perseus could be resurrected again. However, this guy was still pretending to be dead. Although Perseus's blood was spilled all over the ground and he couldn't be more dead, this was only temporary. It wouldn't be long before he would be resurrected. In a sense, this could be understood as pretending to be dead. Since you like to pretend to be dead so much, I'll let you die completely. Athena's arms shook slightly, and a scythe with cold light appeared in her hands. Forget it. Let's end it here. Waving his hand, Dustless only glanced at Perseus, then simply left. His cold eyes were as sharp as a knife and as clear as the stars. It was as if he had forgotten about Perseus in an instant. Are you planning to let him go? Athena, who had caught up, asked in astonishment. She suspected that her eyes were playing tricks on her. Dustless had just tortured Perseus to death, but now he was letting him go. Athena had the illusion that the sun had risen from the west. No, we don't have to be nosy. Someone will deal with that guy. We don't have to do such a thankless thing. He's just a tool for pleasure. It's obviously not worth it to work so hard for a tool. From the beginning to the end, Dustless had treated Perseus as a tool for pleasure. There was no need to spend too much time on him, and someone would help Dustless clean up the mess. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, about an hour had passed. Gulp. An unusual throbbing came from Perseus's decapitated head. Then, Perseus's decapitated head suddenly moved, as if it was a corpse that had come to life. The most frightening thing was that his eyes, which were originally closed, actually opened strangely. Damn it, it hurts. Even though his head was separated from his body, Perseus still spoke and revealed an extremely human-like expression of pain. This was not the strangest thing. Perseus's headless body suddenly stood up and slowly walked towards the head that had fallen to the side. The most shocking thing was that Perseus placed his severed head on his neck. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The dark sky suddenly lit up. It was very warm as the sun. And the place that emitted the fluorescent light was Perseus' body. The shocking crack on his neck was slowly recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. About 10 minutes later, Perseus's body was completely repaired. He was not in a hurry to leave. Perhaps because he was too tired, he only found a corner and sat down. That pervert. The moment Perseus sat down, Dustless's mischievous smile appeared in his mind. He couldn't help but shiver. He subconsciously opened his eyes and looked left and right, afraid that Dustless, the jinx, would come looking for him again. I must take revenge on him. After confirming that Dustless had disappeared, Perseus clenched his teeth. In his long life, the darkest, most terrifying, and most painful time when he was fighting with Dustless just now was the most painful time. It's best if I can join forces with the other gods of disobedience to deal with him. With my strength alone, I can't deal with Dustless. That guy can easily crush me without using his full strength. Moreover, he also has a god of disobedience by his side, Athena. This matter needs to be considered at length. Perseus sighed softly. Although he was a little disappointed, he did not despair. There was still a long time in the future. He firmly believed that Dustless would be unlucky one day. Dustless. Perseus, you seem to be in trouble. Do you need my help? A ghostly voice suddenly came from the dark night. It was as if it suddenly appeared from the bottom of his heart without any warning. Who is it? Hurry up and come out. After being stunned for a moment, Perseus quickly shouted loudly. At the same time, his eyes that were filled with murderous intent swept around. His gaze was sharper than a knife. Aw. It's really scary. About 3 to 4 meters in front of Perseus, a black light appeared, showing the outline of a girl about 13 or 14 years old. Yo. The mysterious girl smiled and raised her hand to summon. The first impression she gave was very gentle, but if one could see the ruthlessness in the depths of her eyes, they might not think so. You are. Your Excellency Athena? Perseus frowned deeply and looked at the girl. Then, he shook his head and said with certainty in a deep voice, "No, although you look exactly the same, I can be sure that you are definitely two different people." "Who exactly are you?" Perseus asked cautiously. A long sword appeared in his hand, and there were obvious beads of sweat on his forehead. He gave off a feeling that he was powerless. The price of resurrection just now should not be small. "It doesn't matter who I am." Stretching out a white finger, the mysterious girl shook it mischievously. "But one thing is certain. Today, you will definitely die in this place." Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. As soon as her voice fell, a sickle similar to Athena's appeared in the mysterious girl's hand. Her speed was extremely fast, and she appeared in front of Perseus in a flash. He had just fought with Dustless and was severely damaged. Now that he had to face this mysterious girl, Perseus was destined to die. Chapter 1465. Perseus was shocked. He didn't expect this fake Athena to be so ruthless. She didn't even give him a chance to say a few words and directly attacked him without distinguishing between right and wrong. Clang, clang, clang. Even if this fake Athena, Métis, wasn't as terrifying as Dustless, Perseus still couldn't handle it. Just now when he fought with Dustless, he was exhausted mentally and physically, especially when he was severely traumatized. As a result, he was now seriously at a disadvantage. It was as difficult as ascending to heaven to fight with Métis. Boom, boom, boom. Perseus was beaten until he kept retreating. He was extremely miserable. Previously, he was bullied and crushed by Dustless. Now a bastard appeared out of nowhere to bully him. Outrageous. You only have such weak strength. Métis laughed sinisterly. There was deep disdain in his words. His tender arms looked as weak as willow branches. But that explosive power made it difficult for Perseus to resist. Poochie. Perseus' face turned pale, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. A conspicuous wound appeared on his abdomen. The miserable appearance of his flesh being torn apart was disgusting. One could even see his bones. Clang, clang, clang. Seeing such a scene, Métis grabbed Perseus tightly and his series of attacks became even more ferocious. "Damn it, this crazy woman!" Perseus shouted sharply. He realized that the situation was getting worse and worse. As time gradually passed, more and more obvious cracks appeared on Perseus' body. It was obvious that he was about to lose. Even if Perseus was still persevering, there was no doubt that his life would be lost in the end. There was no doubt that Métis was the person that Dustless said could help him clean up the mess. Speaking of which, is it really appropriate for us to be so leisurely? In Lucurasia's house, Athena, who had just finished bathing, asked Dustless. Dustless, who was sitting on the sofa, quietly read the newspaper as if he didn't hear Athena's words. "Isn't this what you want to see?" After a while, Dustless' inexplicable words stunned Athena. Perseus should have been killed. Dustless added. His expression was still as relaxed as ever. He looked at Athena, his bright eyes carrying a hidden meaning. Athena's eyes flashed with a hint of awkwardness. She was smart enough to understand what Dustless meant. "I didn't expect you to be able to detect her presence." The she Athena was referring to was naturally Métis. "You're underestimating me." Dustless rolled his eyes at Athena and said, "But, Athena, you are harming yourself. Sooner or later, she will come to us. The noble circle is really messy. You gods really make me worry." Of course, Dustless could understand Athena's helplessness. After all, Mortis was her mother. Humans were not plants. How could they be heartless? Who could kill their own mother? Moreover, Dustless had also heard a little about the matter between Métis and Zeus. According to his understanding, this was originally caused by Zeus' selfishness. In the end, Métis was also that innocent person. What are you going to do? Are you really going to let her devour you? Dustless frowned and asked. The way he looked at Athena changed. It was as if he was saying, "Don't try to trick me." After all, this was what Athena did in the original work. When she met Métis, she deliberately went easy on her, causing Kusanagi Protector to meet a deadly enemy. "Are you afraid?" Athena's eyes were rolling. At this moment, she looked very cunning and sinister. "Me? Afraid? Ridiculous. Hearing this, Dustless sneered and said calmly, "In my dictionary, there is no such word as afraid. She just doesn't have the heart to kill Métis. Her actions are understandable." Dustless immediately added. Thinking about the past between Métis and Zeus, Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. If Zeus was in front of him, he would chop her into pieces and burn her alive. The main god, Cronus, was afraid that his children would overthrow him, so he devoured his newborn children one by one. It was Métis who helped the surviving Zeus to overthrow his father, forcing him to spit out the children he had swallowed. Zeus began to pursue her, and Métis kept transforming to escape. However, Zeus's will and ability were stronger than hers. In the end, he made her submit to his will, and she became Zeus's first partner. When Métis was pregnant, an oracle from Gaia, or it could be said that it was Uranus who told her, said that their first child would be as intelligent and powerful as him in the future. The next boy would repeat the experience of his father, Cronus, and grandfather, Uranus, overthrowing his father and usurping the throne. Zeus was very concerned about this oracle. He used clever words to deceive Métis, and when she wasn't paying attention, he swallowed her into his stomach. In short, all of this was caused by Zeus' selfishness. He was afraid that Métis' child would surpass him, so he swallowed his wife Métis alive. He was the ultimate scum. "If your cheap father appears in front of me, I will skin him alive." Dustless stared at Athena's eyes and said without hesitation. Dustless knew that he was a scum, but compared to Zeus' actions, he knew that he was inferior. Hearing the murderous intent in Dustless' words, Athena fell silent. It was obvious who was right and who was wrong, so there was no need to argue. The only thing that surprised Athena was that Dustless didn't seem to have the intention to destroy Métis. Chapter 1466. Athena stared blankly at Dustless, her purple-black eyes empty and gloomy. As a god-slayer, Dustless did not seem to be interested in the authority of some gods at all. A god-slayer like Marquis Warban would definitely fight to kill a god that did not obey him. "If Mortis does not come to me, I will not do anything," Silver said with a lazy expression, but his tone was exceptionally firm. "You can't be." Thinking of Dustless's strange personality, Athena's tone also became strange. She guessed, "You can't be interested in Mortis, can you?" "Bah." Dustless spat out the tea that he had just drunk. Athena's words had stolen his attention. He stared at her in annoyance, feeling speechless and conflicted. Am I that wretched? Although the feeling of having two goddesses serve him would be ecstasy, both mentally and physically satisfying, Dustless knew that he was not that perverted. "You think of me too wretched and perverted." Dustless smiled bitterly. So far, the only one who had sex with him was Erica. To his surprise, Athena said disapprovingly, "You are a pervert." Hearing this, Dustless rolled his eyes and was too lazy to bother with Athena. Although this fellow was a god, she was very black-bellied. If she could capture him, he would definitely not mind. "Sleep early. We are going back to Japan tomorrow." Too lazy to care about Athena, Dustless went to his room to sleep. Their vacation would end the day after tomorrow. Tomorrow, they would return to Japan for classes and work. 2 days later, Dustless and the others rushed to Canaan school side by side as usual. Erica, Liliana, Dustless, and Athena were all there. As for Guyoli, she had gone home last night. She had heard that Kaneji Winter Horse was looking for her. Although Dustless did not like Kaneji Winter Horse, he did not ask too much. After all, everyone had their own personal matters. Speaking of which, what kind of power did you get in Italy this time? Erica blinked and asked with an expectant smile on her face. "Sorry, I didn't get anything." Dustless shrugged. His free and easy tone showed that he wasn't lying. Of course, there was no need for that. "You didn't get it?" Liliana and Erica looked at each other, both petrified for a few seconds. "Your Majesty, did you not kill Perseus?" This time, it was Liliana who asked. Her nervous look was rather cute and beautiful. "He committed suicide." Wu Chen squeezed out a helpless smile from the corner of his mouth, but he chose not to mention the reason. Avoiding the important and dwelling on the trivial. Hearing this, Athena secretly despised him. If Dustless were to say how he had destroyed Perseus, Erica and Liliana would probably join the enemy and sympathize with Perseus. In short, I didn't obtain that guy's authority, and even if I did, it would be useless to me, so I'll just let him be. The biggest highlight of Perseus was nothing more than the ability of the sun. He could recover from any injury, which was quite amazing. But as the body of the tin-tailed beast, would Dustless care about that ability? Of course not. As the tin-tailed beast, even if not a single cell was left after being destroyed, he could still create something out of nothing and continue to break out of the cocoon and be reborn. The degree of being amazing was even more than that of Perseus. Letting him live will pose a threat to the safety of the world, Liliana said worriedly. Indeed. Erica nodded in agreement. They were not like Dustless, who liked to stay out of things. The two women valued the survival of the world very much, even more than their own lives. He has been killed. His opponent is someone else, Dustless said softly. He also had a headache about Erica and Liliana, who were so kind. If it's him, even if the world is destroyed, it has nothing to do with me. Really? Liliana and Erica asked excitedly. Their eyes were anxious, as if they were saying that if you dare to lie to us, you can forget about having fun in the future. I'm not the only one who killed a god. Salvatore Anthony was there at that time. Maybe he was killed by him. And there are conflicts between disobedient gods. Dustless said angrily. I can testify that Perseus was indeed killed. Athena took the initiative to help Dustless. Perseus was killed by her mother. After that, Athena rushed to the battlefield to investigate. That's for the best. Both Liliana and Erica heaved a sigh of relief, as if they had been relieved of a heavy burden. The two girls talked and laughed, getting along quite well with each other. Really, do you have to care so much about the life and death of others? If you know that I destroyed a few worlds in the past, you'll definitely jump to another camp. Dustless secretly complained. He could not help but break out in cold sweat for himself. If Erica and Liliana knew that he destroyed the Naruto world, One Piece world, Shinigami world, and even the Demon High School world, they would know that he controlled the moon and almost destroyed the earth. All the dirty tricks were known to the two women. Dustless even suspected that Erica and Liliana always saw him as an enemy. After all, they had always been responsible for saving the world. And the role that Dustless played in the past was precisely the ultimate butcher, who destroyed the world. By the way, have you found any traces of Mortis? Quietly approaching Athena, Dustless reminded her seriously. I don't need to say more about the relationship between the two of you. If you don't look for her, she will come to you. At this point, Dustless felt a headache coming on again. He didn't intend to kill Mortis, but if the other party came looking for him, such as Erica and Liliana, he couldn't possibly continue to do nothing. In the end, Dustless, who had no choice, could only wield the butcher's knife against Mortis. Chapter 1467. Dustless was depressed. He seemed to have fallen into a dilemma. Glancing at Athena, Dustless was now deeply suspicious of her moral integrity. She might deliberately go easy on him, and then merge with Mortis to find trouble with him. Dustless sometimes felt a headache for this girl who was not firm in her stance. But he. Thinking of what Athena said before, Dustless could not help but itch in his heart. If I can really get Mortis and Athena to serve me at the same time, he. Dustless was tempted, but he did not feel that his thoughts were dirty. As a man, he would have such thoughts. What are you laughing at? Staring at Dustless, Athena said coldly, if you have some unrealistic ideas, I advise you to stop before going too far. After saying that, Athena left Dustless with her back and quickened her pace. Unrealistic thoughts? Not necessarily. Don't you know who I am? Dustless curled his lips. His confident face was full of conceit. There was nothing that he could not think of. There was absolutely nothing that he could not do. Brother-chan, if you don't hurry up, you will be late. Kusanagi Shizuka urged, and at the same time, she quickened her pace and hurried to the school. Hearing this, Dustless waved his hand and smiled. After living in Kusanagi Shizuka's house for so many days, Shizuka had changed the way she addressed him, and their relationship was quite close. Shizuka also treated Dustless as her own brother. As for the original Kusanagi Shizuka, she had almost forgotten about him. When it's time to be lazy, you should be lazy. Dustless smiled slightly, and then his body turned into a huge flash of light and rushed to Qingjia College. Damn it! Why is there nothing worth investigating? In the health room where Dustless usually worked, a girl with long black hair and a perfect face cursed. Her big eyes were lively, and her expression was very anxious. If we don't find something valuable, that guy will come back. The girl rummaged around, hoping to find something of value, but after nearly an hour of work, all she found were newspapers and other insignificant things. That bastard, don't bother me, the girl said bluntly as she buried her head to look for useful information. Hearing this, Dustless's mouth twitched violently. He tried to maintain a gentle tone and said, "Student, I'm the healthcare teacher here. You can call me Dustless." "You're a healthcare teacher, shut me up." The girl's body suddenly stiffened. She immediately turned her head mechanically. Wu Chen's expression was gloomy as he stared at her with an unkind gaze. Cough, cough, cough. The young girl hurriedly coughed twice and stopped what she was doing. She tidied up her messy clothes and said seriously, "Teacher Dustless, I'm a new student. My name is Hui Na from the Clear Autumn Courtyard." What a familiar name. Wu Chen secretly frowned. His clear eyes stared at the young girl and scanned her twice. Suddenly, he patted his forehead. This little girl seems to be in cahoots with Winter Horse, Dustless suddenly realized and then asked with a smile. "Clear Autumn Courtyard student. Why did you come to my healthcare room?" The whole health room was in a mess, as if there was a thief. It was too horrible to look at. There was no doubt that this was all thanks to the girl in front of him. Although he didn't know what this girl was here for, Wu Chen could be sure that it was Winter Horse Canning who instructed her. Hearing this, Hui Na from the Clear Autumn Courtyard's face turned red. She couldn't say that she was here to investigate him as a thief. "I'm having a headache today, so I wanted to find some medicine." Clear Autumn Courtyard randomly found an excuse, but her face turned even redder. It was obvious that she was lying. Headache. Hearing this, Wu Chen wished he could slap this little girl away. Looking at the messy medical room, this was obviously done by her. Even the hospital bed was kicked far away by her, and there were dark footprints on it. Damn, this was not something a little girl with a headache could do. Even if you want to lie, you have to make people happy. Take it. Dustless opened the drawer where he usually kept his documents and took out a bottle of medicine. He gave it to Hui Na from the Clear Autumn Courtyard and said softly, "You're going to have class soon. Take 2 to stop the pain. Come back after class." "Thank you, teacher." Hui Na from the Clear Autumn Courtyard took the medicine bottle. Seeing that Dustless's expression was natural and didn't have any suspicions, she was relieved. At the same time, she looked at Dustless suspiciously. How did this guy appear? Clear Autumn Courtyard was speechless. Dustless suddenly appeared behind her like a ghost. When he appeared, she didn't feel anything and was quite frightened. Ding ding ding. Dustless and Hui Na from the Clear Autumn Courtyard remained silent. The atmosphere was quite awkward. At this time the bell rang. Clear Autumn Courtyard, who seemed to have found her savior, bowed and left. "I'll thank Dustless next time. I'll go to class first." "Go." Dustless smiled and nodded. Really, her acting is too bad. Even if she has a headache, she should at least look like she has a headache. In the quiet corridor, Dustless watched Hui Na from the Clear Autumn Courtyard run like she was flying. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Wanli Guyoli seemed to have gone home yesterday. Could it be that he went to find Clear Autumn Courtyard? I remember that the two of them have a good relationship. They're both witch yuan. Dustless thought about Hui Na's origin. The information he knew was only a few words. The two of them were not familiar with each other. They had only met once. They had never met before. After thinking about it, it could only be someone else who asked her to get close to Dustless. Chapter 1468. The identity of the Godslayer is really dazzling. No matter where I go, I will attract a lot of attention. The Clear Autumn Courtyard is probably aiming for this gilded status. Dustless smiled as he vaguely understood something. In the original work, Qingqiu Yuan came for the identity of the God Slayer. For Japan, which did not have the protection of the God Slayer, and had the protection of the God of Disobedience, Dustless was the perfect shelter. He was weak, had no background, and was strong. Most importantly, he was perverted. Who did this? Dustless's assistant, Athena, was also confused by the tragedy in the health room. She asked, "Could it be a thief? Do we need to call the police?" Call the police? Hearing this, Dustless thought about it carefully, and felt that this word sounded weird coming from Athena's mouth. It was done by a naughty student. Just clean it up a little. Calling the police is unnecessary. Dustless shook his head, indicating that Athena did not need to make a fuss. Besides, he knew who the culprit was. Ding ding ding. The bell rang, signaling the end of class. In the blink of an eye, it was noon. The cold corridor was noisy, like countless flies buzzing around, giving people a headache. I really don't know why these guys are so talkative. Qingqiu Yuan sighed in front of the window. Her mood was already in a mess. Now that this group of strange students was noisy, Qingqiu Yuan was even more annoyed. "Yuan, how's the progress?" A pleasant, gentle, and slightly expectant voice rang out behind him. "It's you, Yuli." Turning her head to glance at the girl in the school uniform, Grace's expression became even more gloomy, as if she had eaten Coptis chinensis. She smiled bitterly and said, "This morning, I secretly sneaked into the health room and planned to investigate what that guy was doing all day. However, Wu Chen suddenly appeared like a ghost, and I was caught red-handed." Clear Autumn Courtyard's Grace was still at a loss. Where did Wu Chen come from? She thought about it all morning, but still could not figure it out. Her head was still buzzing, and her thoughts were in a mess. "You hacked into the infirmary?" Wanli Guyoli covered her mouth and asked in surprise. "How could you do such a thing? You only have yourself to blame for being caught spying on others' privacy." "The point is, I was caught without seeing anything." Grace Courtyard was even more depressed. If she had gotten some useful information, it would have been fine if she had been caught, but the result was disappointing. She hadn't even gotten a single strand of hair before she was exposed. She really felt like she had suffered a loss. Especially Grace Courtyard, who was afraid of leaving a bad impression on Dustless. Invading other people's workplace for no reason, and turning other people's office upside down, no matter who it was, they would be furious. Actually, your plan was unnecessary. Although Dustless is a god slayer, he's not as scary as you think. He's easy to get along with. The only flaw is, Wanli Guyoli was silent. His face was flushed red as if he found it hard to speak. What flaw? Wanli Guyoli's eyes lit up as if he was grasping at a life-saving straw. He asked anxiously, "You know that I need a suitable excuse to get close to Dustless. I heard from Winter Horse Ganji that guy hates being monitored, especially by people like us who intend to use him." Hearing this, Wanli Guyoli was rather embarrassed. He stuttered for a long time but could not say anything. "Just say it." Grace Courtyard grabbed Wanli Guyoli's shoulder and shook it. He's very perverted." Wanli Guyoli could only say it helplessly. Looking at Grace Courtyard's anxious look, if he did not give her a suitable answer today, he would not be able to have any peace today. "Are you sure?" Grace Courtyard obviously thought of a good plan. She asked with a smile like a fox, and her eyes were narrowed into slits. Both her voice and expression were very cunning. "You can't be thinking of a certain possibility," Wanli Guyoli asked carefully. "You plan to seduce him?" "So smart, as expected of my close friend." Grace Courtyard did not feel uncomfortable when she heard this. Instead, she generously admitted it, and gave Wanli Guyoli a thumbs up. "That you still don't." Wanli Guyoli felt as if his throat was blocked. He swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. The corner of his mouth was incomparably bitter. He felt as if he had shot himself in the foot. Dustless was just a fart. He already had Erika, Liliana, Athena, Wanli Guyoli himself, and Shizuka Kusanagi. There was already not enough for everyone. Now that Grace Courtyard's Grace had joined, there was no place for her to eat. "Yuli. Grace Courtyard's white jade-like nose bridge slightly wrinkled when she saw the bitter expression on Wanli Guyoli's face. She faintly smelled a strong sour smell and immediately ridiculed. Don't tell me you have fallen for him. Have you been successfully conquered by that guy? Of course not. Wanli Guyoli replied without thinking. Is that so? Grace Courtyard's ridiculing expression became even more intense. She looked at Wanli Guyoli, who was fidgeting and clutching the corner of his clothes with a nervous expression, and muttered to herself, what kind of virtue does that guy have? Is his charm really that great? Yoli has actually fallen for him. Don't talk nonsense. Wanli Guyoli was not taken lightly. He angrily glared at Grace Courtyard's Grace, who had a wicked smile on her face. In fact, she also faintly wanted to know Dustless's true intentions. Yoli, I heard you say that guy has gathered a lot of women around him. Most of the Godslayers are harem queens. We must form a united front. You have to help me. Chapter 1469. Clear Autumn Courtyard. Huey's watery eyes were bright and full of expression. She was afraid that others could not see how serious she was. She stared at Wanli Guyoli without blinking. Don't talk nonsense. Wanli Guyoli shook his head like a rattledrum. He decisively rejected Clear Autumn Courtyard Huey's unrealistic idea. He absolutely could not agree to this condition. Tisk tisk. Hearing this, the expression of the Clear Autumn Courtyard's patron was rather calm. She stared at the red-faced Wanli Guyoli with a smile that was not a smile. Her eyes, which were as calm as autumn water, were gentle but exceptionally deep and bright. Huinayu. Taking a step back in fear, Wanli Guyoli secretly knew that things were not good. She had a feeling that her inner thoughts had been seen through. She was really afraid of this kind of wise eyes that contained thousands of different meanings. Beads of sweat fell like raindrops. Just as she was having a headache about how to deal with Clear Autumn Courtyard Hui, her savior, who relieved her of a burden, appeared. This student, Clear Autumn Courtyard Hui, frowned. When she forced Wanli Guyoli into a corner, she did not expect that someone would be so insensible to disturb her plan. Which blind thing is disturbing us? She turned around angrily, but the handsome figure that entered her sight made Hui Na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard dumbstruck. The person's bright eyes were as deep and dark as ink. They were very clear, and one could even see the reflection in his eyes. His messy hair made people feel that it was messy. However, combined with the young man's energetic face and the faint smile at the corner of his mouth, he gave people a feeling that he was rough but delicate. He looked rather gentle and reliable. Teacher Dustless? Wanli Guyoli and Clear Autumn Courtyard Hui were both stunned. They were somewhat sluggish and absent-minded. Dustless's sudden visit had indeed caught the two of them unprepared. In particular, the two women's faces were red and their expressions were slightly nervous. They gave people the feeling that they had done something wrong and were afraid of being found out by others. Teacher Dustless, what's the matter? Clear Autumn Courtyard Hui stammered. Wanli Guyoli's temperament was gentle, so he could only brace himself. Of course. Dustless stared meaningfully at Qingqiu Yuan Hui Na. Soon after, he chuckled and said, Miss Qingqiu Yuan, to tell you the truth, I have already called the police. What did you say? The corner of Grace Courtyard's mouth twitched. She raised her voice by several decibels, and it was very sharp and ear-piercing. She had thought that she could easily get away with it, but she didn't expect that this fellow would call the police. How could she let this go? Although she could raise her butcher's knife to the god of disobedience without hesitation, she couldn't kill a powerless civilian. I suspect that our clinic has been burglarized, Dustless said with a serious expression. In reality, he was just trying to scare this new student. Didn't I just say that the health center is in such a mess because I was looking for painkillers? Hui Na from the Qingqiu Courtyard said with a serious expression. That's too much. Dustless shook his head and said with a smile, the table in our infirmary was broken by someone. How could a little girl like you have that kind of strength? This must be done by some shameless man. Wanli Guyoli, who was at the side, couldn't help but laugh when he heard that. His smiling face was extremely cute. There was no doubt that the shameless burly man that Wu Chen was talking about was Wanli Guyoli. He was mocking her in a roundabout way. This bastard isn't cursing me on purpose, right? Hui Na from the Qingqiu courtyard suppressed her anger and squeezed out a smile that was uglier than crying. That was indeed done by me. I have practiced taekwondo for 2 years. Is that so? Dustless narrowed his eyes and looked very cunning. He laughed in his heart. Finally willing to take the initiative to confess? I have to force you to tell me everything. That's why you should hurry up and get the police to leave. As if she had encountered a terrifying demon, Hui Na from the Qingqiu courtyard said with a face full of disgust. Although she wasn't afraid of the police, in the end, she was just an ordinary human. But as a student, being interrogated by a police officer in broad daylight, how could she face others in the future? Thinking about it, Hui Na from the Qingqiu courtyard's face was full of disgust. Staring at Hui Na from the Qingqiu courtyard's pure white delicate hands, Dustless's eyes lit up as he said with a smile. There's no hurry to find one. Before that, I still have a question. Could it be that this guy has a hand fetish? Catching the light in Dustless's eyes, Hui Na from the Qingqiu courtyard immediately trembled and couldn't help but hide behind Wanligu Yoli. Looking at Dustless, her eyes were full of uneasiness and her heart was full of fear. Student Hui Na from the Qingqiu courtyard should often practice swordsmanship, right? Dustless withdrew his gaze and asked softly. How do you know? Hui Na from the Qingqiu courtyard was stunned for a moment and asked in confusion. She was good with the sword and her swordsmanship was quite high. But what puzzled her was that she had never displayed her swordsmanship in this school. It's as simple as that. Hearing this, Dustless said indifferently. The inside of your right hand's 5 fingers have calluses. This is the best evidence that you practice swordsmanship. Moreover, you are so close to Wanligu. If I'm not wrong, it should be Gansu Dongma who sent you to get close to me, right? This guy is really careful. She looked at Dustless with a slightly sluggish expression. Seeing that her disguise was not exposed, Hui Na from the Qingqiu courtyard no longer hid it. You guessed all right. I am indeed a swordsman, and have a good relationship with Yoli. However, my disguise should be flawless. Besides talking to Yoli just now, I haven't been in contact with him at all. How did you find out? Flawless? There is nothing perfect in this world. The so-called flawless is just your pure self-righteousness. Dustless calmly replied, turning a deaf ear to Hui Na's question. He couldn't say that he was a transmigrator and had the ability to predict the future. Chapter 1470. Grace Courtyard stared at Dustless in a daze. She didn't know why, but although she felt that her plan wasn't bad, when she thought about it, it was indeed a bit laughable. Phew! Since she had been exposed by Dustless, Hui Na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard no longer concealed her identity. She decisively introduced herself and said, My name is Hui Na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard. I am the only daughter of one of the 4 great families, the Clear Autumn Courtyard. She's also the #1 Tachi no Yukari in this generation, and her specialty is spirit subjugation. I understand. Dustless nodded slightly. His bright eyes seemed to see through everything. In fact, he didn't understand a single word. However, he only needed to know her surname and first name. Everything else was trivial. What's the matter? Dustless asked. Compared to these trivial matters, he was more concerned about the purpose of Clear Autumn Courtyard's Hui Na. Since you are a witch and come from the same force as Wanligu, then there is only one possibility for you to approach me. Back then, Wanligu Yoli approached Dustless for the same reason as Qingqiu Yuanhui. I can accept your loyalty, Wu Chen said bluntly. Anyway, Qingqiu Brothel's purpose was so simple and pure. He had gained a pretty girl to fight for him, so why not? But I have a condition. Clear Autumn Courtyard's Hui Na said seriously. Dustless paused when he heard this. He looked at Bright Autumn Courtyard's stern little face in disbelief. He felt rather conflicted and could not help but complain in his heart. You are my subordinate, but you actually have conditions for me, the king. Has the logic of the world been reversed? There's no need to say anything else. I'll reject all of your conditions. Dustless couldn't even be bothered to listen. He rejected everything in a single breath. He already knew what Bright Autumn Courtyard Hui was going to say. Akihabara Keita was stunned. Anger flashed in her eyes. Dustless really didn't give her any face. Whether he agreed or not. At least wait for her to say it first. You just want me to send Liliana and Erica home, don't you? Dustless's tone turned cold. Grace of the Autumn Brothel did not seem to understand the order of first come, first served. This is Japan and they are foreigners, Kei-na said solemnly. Does this have anything to do with me? Dustless was puzzled. Of course it's related. Kui-na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard said seriously. Erica and Liliana have crossed the line. The problem is very serious. You are now in Japan, so it is Japan's. I'm sorry. First of all, I became a god slayer in Italy. Secondly, I first appeared in this world at Mount Lu in China. Dustless calmly said. Mount Lu was actually the place where Luo Hao lived in seclusion. Saying that he was the king of Japan was complete nonsense. The two had nothing to do with each other. Then you are also. Grace of the Autumn Brothel was dumbfounded. She wanted to refute Dustless's point of view, but she could not find a suitable reason. Please don't use a broken island to decide where I belong. If you have to ask me where I am the king, I can tell you clearly that I am the king of the world, Dustless said in a very serious tone. Broken island? You mean our Japan is a broken island? Grace of the Autumn Brothel's mouth twitched violently. Her small face was red. She was very angry at Dustless's words. Her beautiful eyes were spitting fire as she glared at Dustless. She wanted to slap this bastard to death. Although Japan was indeed an island that was extremely short of all kinds of resources, and had a small land plate, it was not a broken island. Especially after a series of reforms in the past, Japan had risen from the original backward island country to one of the top existences on this planet. Please watch your tone, Grace of the Autumn Brothel said with dissatisfaction. However, Dustless's face was still full of frivolity. He half-heartedly looked at the scenery outside the window. Clearly, he did not listen to Grace of the Autumn Brothel's words. You two arguing about this kind of issue is really boring. Why don't you go out and relax? Wanli Guyoli saw that Dustless and Grace of the Autumn Brothel were in a deadlock. He had no choice but to stand up and resolve the situation. I remember now. Grace of the Autumn Brothel's mind suddenly flashed with a light. Grace of the Autumn Brothel's footsteps suddenly stopped. The fire in her gem-like eyes burned even brighter. She angrily glared at Dustless and asked, Since you know my identity, why did you call the police? This was intentional. You finally remembered. Dustless smiled but did not say anything. Soon after, he shook his head. This reaction was a bit too slow. Grace of the Autumn Brothel's pretty face showed signs of turning green. She still remembered that Dustless had said before that it was definitely some shameless burly man who had ambushed her infirmary. Since Dustless knew that she was the thief who had ambushed the infirmary and still said that, wasn't this the same as secretly cursing her? You're so despicable. Grace of the Autumn Brothel, who had come back to her senses, was fuming. Her pretty face was full of depression. It's your reaction that's too slow. You want to protect me by yourself like this? Maybe your king has been killed, and you're still chatting with someone else. Dustless's words were full of thorns. Grace of the Autumn Brothel was speechless. Grace of the Autumn Brothel opened her mouth and found that she was speechless. In short, I can accept your loyalty, but I can't let Erica and Liliana pack up and leave. You should understand the principle of choosing the lesser of two evils. If I had to choose, the person I would abandon would definitely be you. After leaving behind his thoughts, Dustless turned around and left. I knew this would be the result. Looking at Dustless's back, Wanli Guyoli bitterly smiled and sighed. He was faintly dissatisfied with Grace of the Autumn Brothel. This condition was clearly a tyrannical treaty. No one would be able to accept it, not to mention that Dustless was extremely powerful. Knights were just superfluous to him. In fact, Dustless's true thoughts were just as Wanli Guyoli had guessed. If he could take it, he would take it. If he couldn't, then so be it. After all, he wouldn't lose anything. Chapter 1471. Wanli Guyoli and Qingqiu Courtyard Megumi both looked at Dustless's back silently for a while. Then, Qingqiu Courtyard Megumi suddenly stomped her feet in annoyance. Yuli, you were right. Qingqiu Courtyard Megumi wrinkled her nose and said. Hearing this, Wanli Gu Yoli was stunned. His face was full of confusion as he asked, what is true? Qingqiu Courtyard Megumi rolled her eyes at Wanli Gu Yoli and reminded him. Can't you see it? This guy is really lecherous. Seducing him before was the right choice. Towards the end, Clear Autumn Courtyard's garden master smiled with delight. Where did you see it from? Widening his watery eyes, Wanli Gu Yoli was even more puzzled. He frowned and recalled the trivial things that happened just now. Dustless did not do anything out of line. You have to lose 2 beauties to get me. Of course, you can't do this kind of loss-making business. Qingqiu Courtyard Megumi said her strange point of view. Hearing this, Wanli Gu Yoli did not know whether to laugh or cry. He did not expect this reason to be so funny. It was completely unreasonable. In short, Dustless is the king of our Japan. We can't let others touch him. Erika and Liliana are not locals. They must step aside. Qingqiu Courtyard Megumi left with a trace of hostility in her eyes, as if she had made some kind of decision. Ding ding ding. At dusk, the bell for the end of class finally rang. The people of Qingjia Academy all went home one after another. Dustless and Athena also went back together. About 10 minutes later, there were only a few people left in Qingjia Academy. Most of these people were left to clean. Erika, hurry up. Liliana complained with dissatisfaction. Looking up, Erika was staring at the distant scenery with a longing face. Her dazed eyes were a little absent-minded, and her expression was slightly frivolous and gentle. It was late autumn, and the golden leaves were dancing in the sky. The scenery was pleasant. This kind of thing can be left to you alone. Waving her hand, Erika did not mind and pushed the responsibility to Liliana. Liliana could be said to be an all-round genius. She was good at cooking and had a unique set of housework. She had good control over all aspects of her skills. Boom boom boom. A strong wave suddenly swept over, and the beautiful scenery outside the window changed drastically. An inexplicable sandstorm attacked, filling the entire sky in the blink of an eye. What's going on? Was God not giving him any face at all? Isn't it just being lazy and enjoying the summer scenery for a while? Is there a need to be so exaggerated? Erika, who was lost for words, complained, but her face was full of wariness, and her lazy eyes regained their solemnity. His gaze swept around, and from time to time, a cold light flashed across the corner of his eyes. Such abnormal weather defied the laws of physics, and he instinctively thought that it was a scene caused by the appearance of some disobedient god. Damn it, which bastard did it? Liliana's eyes were spitting fire. She had finally cleaned the classroom after much difficulty. Now that the sandstorm blew, it was a tragedy. The classroom was covered in a thick layer of sand and dust. She was caught off guard and ate a mouthful of sand. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of steel rang out. Looking over, Liliana's sword had already been unsheathed. With such abnormal weather, she also guessed that the disobedient god had appeared. The two of you look really scary when you're fully armed. A frivolous and mocking voice rang out. A black shadow was approaching at an incredible speed. It was so fast that it was like a chilly wind, coming and going without a trace. So fast! Liliana and Erika exclaimed in shock at the same time. Even with their strength, they could only capture the fleeting shadows. They couldn't even tell if it was a man or a woman. Bang bang bang. Crack crack crack. The sound of glass shattering rang out. The loud noise brought the dazed Erika and Liliana back to their senses. They stared at the black-haired girl who had suddenly appeared in the classroom, full of vigilance. You did this? Liliana asked with a frown, a hint of hostility in her tone. Although she was quite wary of the girl in front of her, she still had her dignity. Besides, being wary didn't mean that she didn't even have the heart to resist. That's my greeting gift. Nice to meet you. My name is Akihara Kaina. The girl replied with a chuckle. Looking at the slightly disheveled Erika and Liliana, there was a hint of smugness in her tone. She didn't hide the smile at all. How uncultured. Erika sneered. She shouldn't be the disobedient god. She seems to be a witch from our country. Is this how you greet your guests for the first time? That's right. Although Liliana and Erica didn't usually deal with each other, the two decisively abandoned their previous grudges and jumped into the same trench in the face of a great enemy. Are you saying that I'm uncultured? Hearing this, Akihara kinda sneered and mocked without backing down. Have you forgotten that this is Japan? How dare you seduce our king? How despicable, foreigner. This girl's mouth is really asking for a beating. Liliana and Erica looked at each other, the corners of their eyes twitching at the same time. Being called a foreigner was even more unbearable than slapping them. These little girls really give me a headache. At some point, Dustless was already sitting on the roof. He heard the noise of the three girls clearly. It was obvious that Akihara Kaina was deliberately looking for trouble, especially when she made such a big fuss. Her arrogant declaration was even more provocative. To put it bluntly, Akihara Kaina was here to fight. Her method was quite simple and direct. Whoever lost would scram. Chapter 1472. The conflict between the three women was like dry wood meeting a raging fire. There was no need for anyone to ignite the fire. It would burn anyone who meddled. I think it's best for me to remain silent. After pondering for a while, Dustless chose not to help either side. In this kind of situation, the one who would be taken advantage of in the end would be the man. He would only intervene when the situation was out of control. Where did this wild girl come from? Liliana's tone was also unfriendly. Of course, this was secondary. She also caught a strong hint of something else from Grace Courtyard's words. This B***** shook her head. She wanted to monopolize Dustless. How preposterous. Liliana bared her teeth and cursed Grace Courtyard in her heart. This B*** was too shameless. In the end, she just wanted to monopolize the power and kick them away. She was even more despicable than Erica. Clang clang clang, Erica, who knew that there was no way to resolve the grudge between them, also drew her sword and smiled. In that case, it seems that there is nothing to negotiate. Why don't the loser leave? That's what I want. That's what I want. Liliana and Grace Courtyard agreed. The three women's fighting spirit surged and they released a powerful aura, causing their hair to dance in the wind. You still have time to watch the show? They're going to fight because of you. A slightly suspicious voice came from behind. It was quite pleasant to the ear. However, Dustless's expression remained the same. There was no change in his emotions. Without turning his head, Dustless knew who it was. Athena, this doesn't seem to have anything to do with you. Or, suddenly turning his head, Dustless stroked his chin and asked teasingly, don't tell me that you're also here for me like them. Of course. Athena's face was bright red. She then approached Dustless rather shyly. Something's not right. Seeing this, Dustless was dumbfounded. He stared blankly at Athena, who was gradually approaching him. According to his thoughts, after hearing what he said just now, Athena would definitely ridicule him ruthlessly and kick him if she could. Aren't you? Woo-woo. Before he could finish his sentence, Dustless was shocked to find that his lips were blocked. The touch was soft and comfortable, but Dustless couldn't feel happy. He felt like he was being targeted by a demon. His eyes widened as he looked at Athena. She was still holding onto Dustless's mouth, and there was a strange smile on her face. She looked like a venomous snake. Swish. Swish. Taking advantage of Dustless's paralysis, a sharp cold light came straight at him. Poochie. Dustless, who was caught off guard, did not have time to dodge. The cold light slashed at his throat, killing Dustless in an instant. Who are you? Dustless asked with a frown. He had just realized that something was wrong and was about to push Athena away, but it was already too late. He was instantly killed by the Grim Reaper's scythe. Me? I am your Athena. The Athena smiled mysteriously. You are. I know, so it's you. Dustless stared at the girl for a while before he replied. You should be Athena's mother, Métis. In order to get close to me, you actually dressed exactly like Athena. You really put in a lot of effort. You can't go wrong with being careful, Métis replied calmly. Her voice was cold and dark. Then she stared at Dustless, who was still calm despite being cut in half. But your life force is really strong. If you weren't a god slayer, I would have taken you as my own. Shouldn't he die on the spot after being cut in half? Why is this guy completely fine? My life force is not just strong. As the 10-tailed beast, I am immortal. Dustless smiled proudly, not at all worried that his body would be cut in half. Immortal? What a bunch of lies. Métis curled her lips, her face full of disdain. Then she was too lazy to talk nonsense. Where did you hide Athena? That guy actually gave up the dignity of a god, and worked with a god slayer like you. She has fallen. Fallen? I feel that Athena has evolved. Dustless smiled and quibbled. Can this damn guy die or not? Seeing that Wu Chen's head was separated from his body, but he was talking cheerfully and wittily as if nothing had happened, Mortis couldn't help but twitch. This annoying fly still chose to say things that she didn't like. Sorry you didn't hit the real me. How could you die? There was a ripple in the void, and the cold voice was filled with pure sympathy and pity. Métis was indeed quite tragic. She had always been considerate of Zeus, but in the end, her ending was extremely tragic. Zeus was afraid that the child in Métis' belly would surpass him, so he took advantage of Métis' carelessness to devour her. You are no match for me. If you leave now, I can let you go. Dustless, who was cut in half at the waist, said softly. You are already cut in half, and you are still talking nonsense? Métis asked angrily. Métis licked his dry cherry lips, and was just about to ridicule Dustless, when he suddenly noticed that the world in his eyes had inexplicably undergone a change. And Dustless' corpse no longer existed. What was extremely comical was that it had turned into 2 pieces of wood. What's going on? Métis, whose mouth was twitching, asked with a dark expression. You were just hit by my illusion. The scene of me being killed just now was just an illusion. Light flickered and Dustless revived perfectly. He was clean and there was nothing wrong with him. The surroundings were the same as before, and there were no changes. Chapter 1473. Métis' eyes widened as she stared at Dustless. After a while, she snapped out of her daze and clenched her fists tightly. She was especially annoyed by the way Dustless looked at her with pity. It was as if she had swallowed a fly. I'm not a beggar, I'm a god. Who needs your pity, you stinky man? You're not convinced. Looking at the angry Métis, Dustless said. Your acting is very good. I almost thought you were Athena. No. Maybe if you didn't act rashly just now, I would have really thought you were Athena. Dustless looked at Métis deeply and said meaningfully. Oh, where did I go wrong? Métis' anger subsided. She blinked and asked curiously. Actually, I also thought that my acting was perfect. After all, Athena and I are one, so I'm very familiar with her every move. No, you're not familiar with her. Dustless raised his thumb and shook it. His expression did not change as he said. If you didn't take the initiative to kiss me, I would have really thought you were Athena. Is that the reason? Métis frowned. She felt as if she had shot herself in the foot. She originally hoped that by sneaking an attack on Dustless, she could make this guy careless and let his guard down. Then she would take the opportunity to kill him. She did not expect that the reason would be her own body. My ability is a little special. I can sense a person's malice and kindness. When Athena kissed me before, although she was unwilling, at least she did not have the intention to kill me. But you made me feel a chill down my spine. Dustless said frankly. He felt as if he was being stared at by a venomous snake just now, and all his hair stood on end. Is that so? So that's the reason. Even the wisest person would make a mistake, Métis said in frustration. Of course, after a second of silence, she regained her sinister smile. Then, I'll kill you head on. Black mist erupted from Métis's body as he charged forward with a sharp black scythe in his hand. Around her, there were several pitch-black pythons. They looked ferocious and terrifying. They were several hundred meters long, and their bloody mouths were wide open, revealing their dense fangs. Let alone fighting, just looking at them was enough to make one tremble in fear. Untactful woman. A ripple suddenly appeared in the calm sky, and then countless small vortexes appeared. Kaibao Wang. Dustless let out a soft cry, and all kinds of strange divine weapons entered his vision. There were so many of them that even Mortis's crazy eyes were filled with shock. She smelled a threat. All of you disappear. With a light wave of his arm, the various divine weapons that were suspended in the air all poured down, piercing toward the thick pythons around Mortis. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. Although Mortis summoned dozens of pythons, Dustless used Kai Bao Wang to summon even more divine weapons. In the blink of an eye, thousands of divine weapons were shot out, and the ferocious pythons were instantly wiped out, leaving only Mortis alone. So fast. Mortis's face twitched, and she felt that the situation was very wrong. She came with the mentality of crushing silver, but the situation now seemed to be the complete opposite. Looking at the countless divine weapons pointing at her, Mortis realized that she was the one who was at a disadvantage. Their roles had been reversed, and she had turned from a predator to Dustless's prey. Swish, swish, swish. Mortis, whose heart was filled with hatred, did not give up. Instead, she quickly attacked. Not only did Dustless's strength not make her stop, but it also stimulated her ferocious nature. It's good to teach you a lesson. With a wave of his hand, the divine weapons that filled the sky all fell, and the only target was Mortis. Damn it! Why is there such a perverted authority? There are so many of them. Mortis had an unlucky expression, and was very depressed. She had only wanted to test this god-slayer, but who would have thought that this lecherous-looking kid was gold covered by sand? It was strange and unreliable. Swish, swish, swish. All kinds of fatal attacks came at full speed, and Mortis resisted very tenaciously. She waved her scythe and tried her best to block all the weapons that came at her. Clang, clang, clang. The blades kept slashing, but they could not hurt Mortis at all. Her strength and observation skills were not bad, and she could dodge the attacks in time every time. Heaven Lock. Seeing the opportunity, Dustless decisively used his killer move. The golden chain rushed out and went straight for Mortis. What a despicable guy. Although Mortis had been resisting all kinds of divine weapons, her attention was still focused on Dustless. When he attacked, she could clearly sense it. You call this despicable? Dustless rubbed his nose helplessly. If he wanted to kill Mortis, she would have been dead when she was bewitched by the illusion. She had allowed her to live until now out of compassion. Especially after being ambushed by Mortis for no reason. An abnormal desire had sprouted in her heart. It's not a bad idea to capture her and raise her. Dustless looked at Mortis and smiled evilly. He suddenly had this strange thought. One Mortis and Athena would not be enough to make him poor. Clang, clang, clang. The golden chain came straight at her. Mortis dodged sideways and chose to avoid the attack for the time being. Wu Chen's cunning smile made her shudder with fear and uneasiness all over her body. She looked at the Heaven Lock carefully, and the uneasiness in her heart grew. This is the natural enemy of gods. Seeing Mortis's depressed face, Dustless smiled evilly. If you are bound by the Heaven Lock, your life will be over. The higher your divinity, the tighter the Heaven Lock's binding will be. Chapter 1474. Hearing Dustless's words, Mortis sneered. God's genius? A weapon specialized in punishing gods? Such a thing had never been heard of since ancient times. Mortis had only done it because Dustless had made it up. Swish, swish, swish. However, facing the Heaven Lock, Mortis took a detour. There was an inexplicable voice in her heart that reminded her not to be bound. The higher the divinity, the higher the binding rate? There is no such weapon in this world. Mortis tried her best to block the Heaven Lock and all kinds of divine weapons. Then you can give it a try. Wu Chen said expectantly. Mortis's mouth twitched. She said angrily. Do you think I am an idiot? Dustless's face turned cold. He stared at Mortis, whose face was distorted. The last gentleness in his eyes disappeared, and was replaced by blood-red killing intent. If he didn't teach her a lesson, she wouldn't listen to him obediently. Buzz, buzz, buzz. More and more lights flashed in the sky. The other side seemed to be connected to the treasure vault where divine weapons were kept. All kinds of strange weapons kept popping out. Swish, 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 swish. The void stopped, and the swaying sharpness all fell. Compared to before, the number of sharpness paled in comparison. Wave after wave, the number of sharpness increased by tens of times. Damn pervert! Mortis cursed in her heart. She raised her hands and legs, and several giant pythons with bloody mouths flew out. You still want to struggle? With a cold snort, Dustless showed disdain. He floated in the sky. Combined with the divine weapons that kept shooting out from the space behind him, he gave off an arrogant feeling. There were many weapons in the king's treasure that specialized in punishing gods, and the heaven lock was just one of them. PFFF. 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 Although the thick black pythons were strong and mighty, blocking a wave of attacks for Mortis, they could only admit defeat in the face of such a large number of attacks. In the end, they were all killed mercilessly. The only one left was Mortis. Mortis. Where did she go? After eliminating all the pythons, Dustless discovered that Mortis, who was supposed to be behind the pythons, had disappeared into thin air. I've been tricked. She only used these snakes to attract my attention. I didn't expect her to run away. How disappointing. In my heart, she's a Saint Seiya who will never admit defeat. Dustless said in astonishment. There was a trace of shock in his words. In his heart, Mortis had always been the representative of the stubborn faction. Unless he died in battle, he would never run away. Let's stop here. As long as you are still interested in Athena, we will meet again one day. Dustless was extremely calm. Métis' target was only Athena. As long as she did not give up on her plan, there would be a day when she would come looking for him. There was no need to worry. It's about time you guys stopped. Dustless turned his gaze and fell on the three girls fighting in the classroom. He sighed slightly. He was also troubled by this kind of situation. Trivial matters between women were the most difficult to resolve. If he did not handle it well, he might offend one of them for no reason. After all, women were famous for being petty. Clang, clang, clang. Sparks flew in the classroom. The three girls were in the midst of a fierce battle. Although Erika and Liliana were working together to deal with Akihihara Kaihihara. What surprised everyone was that the fierce Akihihara Kaihihara did not show any signs of defeat. What kind of freak is this guy? Even when Liliana and I are working together, we are still at a disadvantage. Erika was speechless. She glanced at Liliana. Although she did not say much, her face was full of shock. All of you stop. Liliana, put down the sword in your hand. Erika, put down the table in your hand. Akihihara Kaihihara, put down the bench in your hand. A calm roar suddenly came. The three girls seemed to have stepped into a gravity field. Moving became dozens of times more difficult, and even breathing became difficult. The three of them were shocked. This mysterious person who suddenly disturbed the situation was too terrifying. Just the aura he revealed made them feel as if they had fallen into an ice cave. It was as if they had been abandoned by the whole world. Who are you? Which god of disobedience is it? The three girls shouted nervously at the same time. They tried to put some distance between them and the mysterious person. Who would have thought that their feet would fall uncontrollably just as they raised them? That supreme aura of a ruler made them not dare to act rashly. God of disobedience? I am not some god of disobedience. Akihihara Kaihihara is fine. After all, we have only met once. But Erika and Liliana, you two are so sad. After all, we live under the same roof every day, and you don't even remember my voice, said the black shadow in a gloomy tone. At the same time, he revealed his true identity, Dustless. Liliana and Erika were both stunned. They had been so focused on Akihihara Kaihihara that they did not notice Dustless's existence. So much so that they thought Dustless was the so-called god of disobedience. And you? Dustless frowned when his gaze fell on Akihihara Kaihihara. He said in dissatisfaction, I should have told you before that if you have any unrealistic ideas, you should give them up early. At the end of his words, the entire classroom, no, the entire teaching building, seemed to be in the middle of a turbulent sea. It swayed back and forth in great shock. This. Akihihara Kaihihara's face was instantly covered in cold sweat. Her gaze toward Dustless also gradually changed. However, what was not flattering was that it was not fear, but an indescribable excitement. Chapter 1475. Wu Chen's brows furrowed into a knot. He knew why Hui Na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard approached him. But no matter how outstanding I am, you don't have to look at me like that. Dustless expressed his disgust, cold sweat involuntarily dripping down his face. This look full of possessiveness was not a good sign. This guy wants to keep it all to himself? Looking at each other, Erica and Liliana could see the anger in each other's eyes. They were willing to sacrifice Dustless, but this excessive bastard wanted to take Dustless for himself. How hateful. You can go home now. This is a war between women. It has nothing to do with you. Erica's words were full of hostility. Everyone had a limit to their patience. You're right. Liliana and Qingqiu Courtyard's Hui Na nodded at the same time. Hearing this, Dustless just rolled his eyes and said unceremoniously, "Right my ass." Dustless was almost 100% sure that as soon as he left, the girls would tear down the entire teaching building. No, they would forcibly tear down the entire Qingjia school. All of you stop. Dustless ordered again. This time it was different from before. His tone was obviously more serious, sharing the burden, and containing a majestic aura that could not be disobeyed. What a strong strength. Clear Autumn Courtyard Huey's eyes shone brightly. Her unconventional intentions were even more obvious. What's wrong with this guy? Why do you have to force me to make a move? No. She seems to be doing this on purpose. I remember that she once tested that kid from Kusanagi Protector. Dustless pondered. He had a whole new level of respect for Grace Courtyard. She was much more difficult to serve than the other girls. Let's stop here. I don't want to cause more trouble. It's too difficult for you to challenge me with your strength. Rolling his eyes, Dustless said bluntly, "One arm, no, one finger is enough to deal with you." Upon hearing that, Erica and Liliana couldn't help but burst into laughter. Are you looking down on me? Hui of the Clear Autumn Courtyard stomped her foot angrily. Her tone had a hint of grievance. This fellow didn't give her any face at all. Even if this is the truth, you should pay attention to the situation. Your Majesty, let me test how sharp your sword is. With a cold expression, Grace Autumn Courtyard attacked with a sharp longsword. Her speed was unimaginably fast, even faster than when she was fighting Erica and Liliana. Could it be that this guy was hiding his strength? Looking at each other, Erica and Liliana could see the shock in each other's eyes. This girl who kept calling them foreigners was too strong. As far as humans are concerned, this speed is already the limit. With ripples in his eyes, Dustless shook his head slightly. Perhaps it was as fast as lightning in the eyes of Erica and Liliana, but it was as slow as a turtle in Dustless' eyes. In the end, Grace of Autumn Courtyard was still a slightly stronger human. Her nature had not changed. I'd like to see how you can stop me with one finger. Grace of the Clear Autumn Courtyard stomped hard on the ground, and her speed increased a little in an instant. She held the sharp blade with both hands, and the simple long sword slashed toward Wu Chen's face. Watch out! Liliana and Erica cursed worriedly. They secretly cursed that bastard Hui of the Clear Autumn Yard. What if he couldn't handle it? She might even cut off Dustless's head. However, what happened next proved that the two of them were overthinking things. Clang, clang, clang. Grace Courtyard's broadsword was blocked. The ear-splitting noise stunned her. As if she had hit a rock with all her strength, Grace Courtyard's arm was numb. Looking over curiously, Hui Na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard was instantly stunned. His eyes widened as he saw Wu Chen easily block his attack with a single finger. He really blocked it with one finger? Grace of the Clear Autumn Courtyard was speechless. Looking at the delicate finger, she was furious. If this was an ordinary weapon, she could pretend nothing had happened and laugh it off. However, she was holding a divine weapon that could cut through iron like mud. Is his finger too hard, or is my sword too blunt? Grace Courtyard thought to herself. At the same time, she withdrew her sword. Dustless thought that she would stop, but who would have thought that the sword she withdrew would be like a venomous snake spitting out its tongue, revealing a sinister cold light once again. Taking advantage of Dustless's carelessness, she suddenly stabbed at him. You can't go back on your words after losing. Grace Courtyard chuckled, a hint of pride in her tone. It was as if she could already see Dustless's miserable defeat. This is the price for underestimating me. What a despicable woman. Liliana and Erica cursed. They did not expect Grace Courtyard to play this game. The two girls clenched their fists, but they could not stop her. The winner was king, and the loser was in the wrong. It did not matter if she was despicable or not. The only thing worth paying attention to was the winner. This is boring. Glancing faintly at the cold light, Dustless did not even bother to move his hand this time. He directly revealed a strong temperament that he had experienced in several worlds. It has already reached the level of shock. Ka. All the desks and benches in the classroom turned into a large cloud of dust. Clang clang clang. Grace Courtyard's face changed greatly, and the sword that was stabbed at Dustless fell to the ground involuntarily. She just felt as if she was carrying an unprecedented mountain on her back. Her body was unable to move, and her strength was drained. Not to mention continuing to fight against Dustless. Even breathing was dozens of times more difficult. Can you withstand Haushika? Although it's difficult, it's not bad. Chapter 1476. People who have experienced hundreds of battles and come into contact with Haushika, especially Dustless's Haushika, have already reached an incredible level of power. At that time, there was absolutely no one in the world who could surpass him in Haushika. Turnachingchio was barely able to stabilize her body. To be honest, Dustless was really surprised. After all, from the outside, she was just a simple little girl. Stop it! Turnachingchio, who couldn't bear it, was the first to admit defeat. Her face was sweating like rain, and her clothes were wet behind her back. Dustless could even see her exquisite body. Stop it! Erica and Liliana also said with embarrassed faces, although this supreme momentum was not directed at them. You've played enough of your boring tricks. The imposing manner of Mount Tai was completely restrained. Wu Chen's line of sight was also taken back. His mind was waning. Turnachingchio's series of actions were actually to test Dustless. That's right, it was a test. Kusanagi Protector Court was an example. After a series of sad tests by Turnachingchio, they barely passed in the end. However, when it was Dustless's turn, it was Turnachingchio's turn. It's not over yet. Turnachingchio smiled mysteriously and pointed to Dustless's feet. What is that? Liliana and Erica screamed at the same time. They saw a large group of black waves under Dustless's feet, as if it was connected to another world, penetrating the cold and isolated atmosphere. No matter how much nonsense you make, you have to stop. If a child excessively wears down an adult's heart, the consequences will be very serious. Dustless's tone was a little colder. Giggle. Hearing this, Turnachingchio just laughed sweetly and whispered, "If someone wants to see you, I can't help it. As a king, you should be magnanimous." Magnanimous? There's no need to talk about magnanimity with a barbarian like you who doesn't know the rules. Liliana said angrily. She had no good impression of Turnachingchio. That's reasonable. Erica also nodded slightly. She then looked at Dustless worriedly and said, "Hurry up and come out. This guy is very cunning. What if you get taken advantage of?" Hearing this, Wu Chen felt a burst of warmth in his heart. Although Erica's worry was superfluous, it was undeniable that she was sincere. "You guys want to go too?" Gazing at Erica and Liliana with a weird look, Hui of Qingqiu Courtyard said with a malicious smile, "Okay, I can fulfill your wish." The moment he said that, the same black hole as the one under Dustless's feet appeared next to Erica and Liliana's feet. With a strong gravitational force, it slowly swallowed Erica and Liliana, who were struggling. In the blink of an eye, the two of them were gradually swallowed up. Since I have nothing better to do, I might as well go take a look at that so-called soul world. I also want to see what kind of divine being is inside. Dustless had already guessed the identity of the person who wanted to see him. Although it was a bit boring, it was also a good way to kill time. Swish, swish, swish. At the same time, a silent, sinister wind blew. The penetrating chill was like the descent of the death god, and one could vaguely hear the suppressed cries of ghosts and wolves. Silver, who had sensed the subtle changes, also recovered his composure. He stared at the indistinct shadow behind Hui of Qingqiu courtyard. Dustless alerted loudly, "Watch out behind you." Sensing a cold, murderous aura, he warned loudly. "Behind me?" Hui of Qingqiu courtyard was stunned. She subconsciously turned around, and a huge, bone-piercing cold light immediately rushed into her eyes. It was only a little away from killing Hui of Qingqiu courtyard. However, it was also at this moment that a lucky star fell from the sky. All things heaven's beckoning. A gravitational force enveloped Hui of Qingqiu courtyard, and then Dustless pulled her over. Only then did Hui of Qingqiu courtyard escape from the gates of hell by a fluke. Otherwise, she would have stepped into another world, the underworld. Plop. Hui of Qingqiu courtyard, who had yet to recover from the shock, was clearly in a daze. She seemed to still be immersed in the terrifying experience just now. "You're here again?" Frowning, Dustless scrutinized the person who had ambushed him for a few seconds. It was actually Mortis, who had left and returned. "Are you surprised, Mr. Godslayer?" Looking down at Dustless, Mortis said with an "I'm thinking for you" expression. "Traveling to other places, I even gave you a female companion for free. You should thank me for being so compassionate. Is that so? The god of disobedience is still so considerate. How rare." Dustless ignored Mortis's teasing and responded calmly. This time, it was Mortis's turn to be puzzled. She asked, "Aren't you afraid that I'll devour Athena? While you're away, it's a good opportunity for me to make my move. I don't actually have the initiative in this matter. It's a private matter between the two of you. If Athena is willing to let you devour her, I can't stop you even if I want to. If she doesn't want to be devoured, then you can't do it either," Dustless explained calmly. Hearing this, Mortis's face was immediately filled with anger. She asked in a low voice, "Are you looking down on me? Do I need Athena's charity?" Dustless shrugged. One sentence was enough to make Mortis choke. "I'm just stating a fact." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Mortis could not help but be furious. Just as she was about to argue with Dustless, the time had come. He and Hui of Qingqiu courtyard had disappeared from Mortis's sight. "You ran fast enough. I won't let you off in the end," Mortis said viciously. Although she said that, she was rather glad in her heart. If Dustless had continued to stay here and cause trouble, her plan would have definitely failed. Mortis would not have been able to deal with his godly strength and unbelievable ability. Chapter 1477. It's really a magical world. In this strange world, the fog was rolling, and the whole world was white, as if it was the beginning of the hazy period, surrounded by dense primitive forests. "It's really hard for her to bring me to this world," Dustless said as he walked. When he first came to this world, Keiko Kyoto disappeared from the world, and disappeared inexplicably. It was probably prepared by her, and she had long expected such a situation to happen. In this strange world, Keiko Kyoto was much more familiar with it than Dustless and others. Well, right at this time, in front of Dustless, a heavy fog suddenly attacked. An ancient wooden house suddenly appeared in the originally empty area that was supposed to be devoid of anything. In addition, the wooden house was surrounded by a transparent barrier. This old man really knows how to enjoy life. Everywhere he goes, he brings a house with him, Dustless muttered. As a transmigrator, he knew that the person in this room was a god of disobedience called Susanoo, who was also Keiko Kyoto's helper. But what is this barrier used for? Looking at the transparent barrier outside the door, Dustless was quite curious and surprised. In the original work, he did not remember Kusanagi Protector had such an encounter. Kusanagi Protector entered the wooden house very easily. Gulp. In a rather antique room, a black-haired uncle drank a mouthful of wine, showed an expression of wanting more, and then wiped the remaining wine stains on the corner of his mouth. "Little boy, if you want to blame someone, blame that little girl Keiko. She asked me to test you." Pouring another glass of wine, Susanoo was about to drink it, But an untimely voice came from outside the door, and his alcohol addiction disappeared without a trace. Of course I know that she asked you to do such a boring thing, otherwise I would have torn down your nest. Otherwise, do you still think you can enjoy drinking? The door was gently pushed open, and there was a creak sound, revealing the young man's elegant face, and his black eyes were shining like stars. Susanoo was stunned for a long time. How did you come in? What happened to the barrier I set up? Susanoo, who had just recovered from his shock, ran out of the door with a stunned look on his face. If Dustless wanted to come in, he would have to break through the enchantment barrier. Susanoo was confident in his own strength, and the enchantment barrier he set up was strong enough. Originally, he expected Dustless to take a lot of effort to break in, but who would have thought that this guy was like a ghost without a physical body, floating directly in. There was no movement at all. How is this possible? Walking out of the door, Susanoo stared dumbfoundedly at the enchantment barrier. Susanoo's eyes widened as he saw that the enchantment barrier was intact, but inexplicably there was a circular hole in it. Without a doubt, it was Dustless's doing. How did you do it? Susanoo asked in disbelief. How did you get in? It's simple. There's nothing to be shocked about. He unceremoniously picked up Susanoo's wine pot and gently took a sip. The spicy taste immediately spread throughout his internal organs. Dustless secretly sighed at the good wine. My dojutsu kamui can easily tear this kind of enchantment barrier, so it's normal that you can't detect it. Dustless explained slowly. The method is very simple. Use kamui to focus on a certain point, and then forcibly use dojutsu to tear it apart, just like how Kakashi in Naruto was able to tear apart Uchiha Madara's truth-seeking ball. The enchantment barrier is completely superfluous for kamui. Okay, long story short. Putting down the jug of wine, Dustless calmed his thoughts and said coldly, "Let's stop the children's game. The entrance exam is a child's game. It's okay to play it occasionally, but don't do it again." Hearing this, the corners of Susanoo's mouth twitched. Dustless's tone made him quite unhappy. It was like the relationship between a superior and a subordinate. He was also a kami, but it felt more like he was Dustless's little brother. "I don't care about that. I'm just following Kaina's arrangement." Shrugging his shoulders, Susanoo put on an expression of a dead pig not afraid of boiling water. The god of disobedience is really a guy who doesn't understand etiquette. Don't you think you should thank me? Dustless glanced at Susanoo lightly and said, "Thank you." Hearing this, the corners of Susanoo's mouth twitched violently, and he cursed in his heart. "You brat, you broke into my territory and accused me indiscriminately, but now you want me to thank you? How ridiculous. What do I have to thank you for?" Susanoo asked in a strange tone. "You are still alive." Dustless gave a deceptive answer. Hearing this, Susanoo was stunned for a long time. And then like a provoked lion, his whole body trembled. He finally understood what Dustless meant. "You mean I should thank you for being alive and talking to you?" Susanoo asked pointedly. "In other words, you let me live because of Kaina's face? Otherwise, I would have died a long time ago. This old man understood what you meant correctly, right?" Hearing this, Dustless glanced at Susanoo in surprise, and then immediately nodded and said softly, "That's right, otherwise your head would have been cut off a long time ago." Susanoo almost spat out the wine he just drank. "This guy's words are too infuriating. I am a real kami. You think you are so great just because you are a god slayer? Do you have to look down on me like this? To be honest, I also want to see how strong the legendary god slayer is." Susanoo said in a deep voice. The surface of his body emitted a large purple-black light, and the quiet house suddenly shook with a caw-caw-caw sound. There were obvious cracks all around. Chapter 1478. 10 billion divine beasts danced in Susanoo's mind. Dustless's arrogance made him lose face. "No matter what, I'm still a god, and you're just a human. Although you're a god slayer, you should at least take care of an old man. Ignorant brat." Susanoo complained in his mind, but he put on a helpless expression. He released his powerful aura, but Dustless was not affected at all. He leisurely drank his wine and quietly mocked his powerlessness. "Just say what you want to say." Dustless found it rather funny to see this boorish middle-aged man so depressed. He said playfully, "You're a god, but I'm a godslayer. If you don't give me a reasonable explanation, you're going to be in trouble today." "You forget it." Despite his displeasure, Susanoo chose to swallow his anger. There was no need to fight Dustless over such a small matter. In particular, Dustless had always crushed his opponents with decisive strength. He might even fail miserably this time. "I called you here because it's about Métis." On the other side, Keona, Erica, and Liliana of the Clear Autumn Courtyard were engaged in another battle. In this unfamiliar world, even if Liliana and Erica worked together to deal with Keona of the Clear Autumn Courtyard, they had no advantage. In fact, they were at an absolute disadvantage. Swish, swish, swish. The three figures clashed, releasing powerful energy ripples. Wave after wave of destructive shockwaves spread out from the center of the battle, and everything that came into contact with it was reduced to ashes. Boom, boom, boom. Two of the figures were sent flying, their bodies smashing into the mountain, creating bottomless pits. Upon closer inspection, they were Liliana and Erica. "Our swordsmanship is on par, but that guy's sword should be some kind of divine artifact," Erica said unwillingly, feeling that Keona of the Clear Autumn Courtyard had an unfair advantage. "Throw your sword away if you have the guts." She wanted to say this, but she found it hard to say it out loud. Everyone knew that the winner was king, and the loser was a bandit. As for the process, no one cared. Attack her from the front and back. Liliana was sweating profusely, and so was Erica. Their clothes were soaked in sweat. Their clothes were almost transparent, but no one appreciated their graceful cleavage. In this world, the two of them were at a great disadvantage. Full of fighting spirit, Huina of the Clear Autumn Courtyard praised, but her tone was colder. She raised her black longsword up high with a serious expression. An indescribable aura erupted from her body as she chanted an ancient and cryptic incantation. "O heavenly sword of gathering clouds, with my body as a sacrifice, I am willing to appease the raging spirits." After she finished chanting the incantation, Kaina's body began to change. Her entire body turned black, and her sword-wielding right arm was wrapped in a spiraling substance. That was not the most important thing. What kind of monster is this bastard? She's more like a godslayer than a human. Erica and Liliana were both dumbfounded. They were already at a disadvantage in this world. Now that Huina of the Clear Autumn Yard had unleashed her true form, the situation was perilous. The two of them had no chance of winning. "I see. That's all you want to say?" After a few minutes, Dustless endured his boredom and carefully listened to Susanoo's explanation. He had a clearer understanding of Mortis's purpose. Yes, that crazy woman is very dangerous. Compared to the relaxed Dustless, Susanoo was much more serious. He took a sip of wine and said, "She intends to devour the sky of the world you live in to take revenge on the sky god Zeus. I know about such trivial matters. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave." Dustless stretched and stood up to move his stiff body with a bored expression. Seeing Dustless's nonchalant expression, Susanoo's mouth twitched violently. He cursed, "You don't know how to respect people at all. I've been talking for a long time, but you're about to fall asleep. How dare you?" Susanoo was furious. Looking at Dustless's face, he felt extremely unlucky. "Goodbye." Realizing that time was gradually passing, Dustless's temper was finally worn out. If he guessed correctly, Keiko Takumi must have gone to find trouble with Liliana and Erica. In this world, it seems that as long as I think of someone's appearance in my mind, I can go to their side. After saying that, Dustless closed his eyes and recalled Liliana and Erica's appearance in his mind. Then he felt a powerful force pulling him away. Boom, boom, boom. The deafening sounds of explosions rang out incessantly. Swords and sabers danced in the air, and sparks flew in all directions. The huge impact made people feel as if they were brushing past their bodies, making them feel as if they had been slapped several times. Dustless opened his eyes and saw Erica and Liliana, who had been suppressed to the point of being in a sorry state. Ah, they're being suppressed so badly. Dustless glanced at Erica and Liliana, who were sweating profusely. Due to their wet clothes, he saw some places that he shouldn't see. Ah! An inhuman roar came from Keiko Takumi's mouth. Then a huge slash shot out. Liliana and Erika were in danger. She went a little overboard. Dustless frowned. This powerful slash left a mess wherever it went. Its momentum and sharpness were extremely ferocious. It had already exceeded the limits of what the two women could endure. Dustless could even guarantee that Erika and Liliana would be crippled even if they didn't die. In a flash, he stood in front of Erika and Liliana like a wall. Chapter 1479. The pitch-black blade was unstoppable. Seeing Dustless appear, Takayuki Garden, whose mind was occupied by Tian Songyun's power, only hesitated for a moment. Then she attacked mercilessly. Not only did she not show mercy, but she also attacked more fiercely. Dustless caught a trace of bone-chilling coldness. Immediately, a bloody light appeared in his hand. An extremely evil and slender long sword appeared in Dustless's hand. The surrounding space suddenly became cold and piercing. Miserable cries and howls could be faintly heard. This sword was the first ghost blade that Dustless got from the Five Elder Stars, the King of Pirates. Clang, 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 clang. The first ghost blade was unsheathed. Dustless, who was holding the first ghost blade, was extremely terrifying. His whole body was filled with scarlet mist, which was the embodiment of blood. His eyes had turned red, like a wild beast that was about to devour a human. Facing the black longsword, Wu Chen pursed his lips and chuckled. He didn't show any signs of weakness. A cold light swept out from his strong and powerful arm. Boom, boom, boom. Unparalleled airwaves roared and spread. Erika and Liliana, who were unprepared, were affected by the explosive power, and were blown away by the strong wind. Crack, crack, crack. In addition, a slight cracking sound could be heard. How is this possible? Cracks appeared on the Kusanagi sword? Takayuki Garden's expression changed greatly. Her voice was filled with endless shock. Obviously, there was something wrong with her voice. It was a vigorous and vicissitude voice. Is it that god called Tian Songyun? Dustless understood that Takayuki Garden had been corroded by Tian Songyun's power. Where did this bastard get so much strength? Tian Songyun cursed in his heart. There were some cracks on the Kusanagi sword. This was just the bad result of the first confrontation. What would happen if they fought a few more times? Tian Songyun had goosebumps. That sword is very strong. Tian Songyun took a deep breath. This was the first time he had seen such a situation. In just the first clash, the Heaven Cluster Cloud sword had already shown signs of cracking. Dustless's weapon was not inferior to the Heaven Cluster Cloud sword. Although Dustless's first-generation Ghost Blade had cracks, the shock it brought to Tian Songyun was indescribable. Don't be so sad. It's just a broken saber. Don't worry about it. Wu Chen caught a glimpse of Tian Songyun's gloomy face, and tried to persuade her out of goodwill. A broken saber? Clear autumn courtyards. Huina's mouth visibly twitched. Then she angrily roared. This is a divine artifact. How many are there in the world? To be able to fight against my weapon and not be at a disadvantage. That weapon of yours must be a divine weapon, right? I'm not sure about that. I just snatched it along the way. Hearing this, Dustless shook his head. Back then, he had only robbed the 5 honored stars. As for whether the first-generation Ghost Blade was a divine artifact or not, Dustless did not know. However, there were countless rumors about the first-generation Ghost Blade. There were even rumors that the first-generation Ghost Blade was a weapon that could destroy the world. Even if it was not a divine artifact, it would not be too far off. It's just a weapon. If it's destroyed, then so be it. I have plenty of such things. Dustless casually said. His expression made him look like a nouveau riche. He lacked everything, but he didn't lack weapons. There were countless heaven-defying weapons in the king's treasure. Even if the first-generation Ghost Blade was destroyed, Dustless would not care. After all, he still had the Heaven Cluster Cloud sword to accompany him. Plenty. Tian Songyun was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. He was so angry that he almost choked to death. It was true that he had plenty of weapons, but not everyone had a pile of abilities like him. Divine artifacts of all kinds were as common as sand. This guy isn't purposely attacking her, is he? Erica and Liliana looked at each other with bitter smiles. Their eyes were also staring at the first-generation ghost blade in Dustless's hand. The evil that wanted to destroy the world was definitely not a joke. Even hundreds of meters away, they felt as if they had fallen into hell. "Brat, don't be too proud," Tian Songyun roared. He forcefully endured the anger of having his Tian Songyun sword destroyed. He raised his hand and a blood-red light shot towards Dustless. There was a flaw in his precious weapon. He really wanted to kill. Although swordsmanship is not my forte, but a powerful spiritual pressure erupted from his body. Dustless stared at the incoming attack. He also slashed out an even more majestic sword pressure. Gathering spiritual pressure on the blade, and using all my strength to release it, I can still do such a simple thing. Ka ka ka. The earth was like a piece of paper, and the tyrannical slash tore it apart. It was easier than cutting vegetables, and a crack several meters deep was directly cut into the ground. This guy actually knows how to use a sword. Not to mention, his swordsmanship is incredible. Erica and Liliana were both surprised. It was the first time they had seen Dustless use a sword, so they were quite surprised. Incredible? Dustless was a little proud. He had never learned swordsmanship, but the enemies he had fought before were as many swordsmanship masters as carps crossing the river. For example, Hawkeye in One Piece, Baldy Gorosei, Captain Yamamoto in Shinigami, and Aizen. Their swordsmanship was actually not bad. Over time, Dustless imitated them. Unknowingly, his swordsmanship also caught up. It was just that he didn't notice it. Poochie. Dustless's slash easily tore apart Tian Songyun's light, but its power was greatly reduced. However, its momentum did not decrease. Wherever it went, a hideous crack would flash. I might die if I'm not careful. Tian Songyun was sweating, and his heart was cold. He vaguely saw the Grim Reaper with a scythe. Chapter 1480. Tian Songyun's worries were not unfounded. The incoming slash gave off a loud boom, and the Soul World, which was originally filled with clouds and mist, was affected. Even the weather started to change. The mist receded and was replaced by the setting sun. It was desolate. Leaves were falling, and the wind was howling. It felt like the end of the world. No, this guy doesn't dare to kill me. Suddenly realizing that he was currently occupying Huina's body in the clear autumn courtyard, Tian Songyun relaxed. Although his methods were despicable and were despised by others, surviving was more important than anything else. Kill me if you have the guts. Tian Songyun displayed his shameless abilities. His mocking voice was filled with arrogance and disdain. Kill me if you have the guts, and your little lover will die as well. However, there was a saying that one would not die if one did not seek death. If one sought death, especially in front of someone stronger than oneself, then one would definitely die. I didn't plan to kill you, but humans were fickle. At first, Dustless only wanted to teach him a lesson and warn Tian Songyun not to occupy Huina's body in the clear autumn courtyard. However, there were some arrogant people in the world. Since you want to die so much, I'll fulfill your wish. With an evil smile, Dustless swung the first-generation ghost blade again. A huge slash appeared. Its scale and power were even greater than before. Boom boom boom. The power of the two slashes overlapped, and the power immediately changed. It was magnified by several times, and the aftershock was unstoppable. The innocent ground was instantly covered in blood, as if it was being torn apart by gravity. The shocking cracks made one feel despair. Even the sky was covered by the flashes of the slashes. Nothing was worth mentioning. I'm really done for this time. Tian Songyun's heart turned cold. He did not expect Dustless to be so ruthless. His attitude changed faster than flipping a book. He wanted to kill him, and he did not care about his feelings at all. Even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. After all, he was a god. Tian Songyun would not just wait for death. Even a dog would jump over a wall when it was forced into a corner. Moreover, he was a true god. Swish, swish, swish. The heavenly sword of gathering clouds was swung a few times, and several streaks of cold light filled with murderous intent shot out. Being forced into a dead end, Tian Songyan decisively chose to drag Dustless down with him. He had used up all of his strength in these few slashes, trying to forcefully tear apart the world-exterminating light. Pucci. Dreams were beautiful, but reality was cruel. The moment the Heaven Cluster Cloud Sword's attack came into contact with Dustless's attack, it crumbled in the blink of an eye. There was no comparison at all. The difference between the two was like heaven and earth. What would happen if a feather collided with a flame? Needless to say, the end result was that he would be turned into ashes. Tian Songyun's attack was also like this. The moment the two made contact, he died. Pucci. The flash of light pierced through clear autumn courtyard's Huina's body. She herself was unharmed, but the divine weapon she was holding, the heavenly sword of gathering clouds, turned into countless fragments that danced in the wind. The students from the clear autumn courtyard are going to cry, Liliana and Erica said with a headache. Dustless had destroyed someone else's weapon. If it was an ordinary weapon, it would be fine, but the heavenly sword of gathering clouds' value was extremely rare. With Dustless's status, even if he sold his entire fortune, he would not be able to afford it. He did not have that much money, and he was even living off a woman. Without Shizuka Kusanagi, he would probably be homeless. In reality, the other person was also crying. Damned brat! Susanoo was so angry that he smashed the table. The moment the heavenly sword of gathering clouds was destroyed, he sensed it. Although his heart was filled with rage, Susanoo did not have the courage to look for trouble with Dustless. The difference in strength made him reconsider his attitude towards Dustless. The strong always had some privileges. Bastard! Tian Songyan was furious. His consciousness was already collapsing. He knew very well what this meant. What did it mean that the god of disobedience was defeated by the Godslayer? Dustless would obtain the authority of the heavenly sword of gathering clouds in the future. Hateful. 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 Tian Songyan was so angry that he gritted his teeth. His plan to drag Dustless down with him had failed. He was extremely depressed. If he could materialize, he would have a constipated expression on his face. I know that you are unwilling to accept this. Feeling Tian Songyun's resentment, Dustless sneered and said, "To be honest, even if I obtained your trash authority, I would not care about it. It was just the heavenly sword of gathering clouds. He had many divine equipment. Why would he care? So, I've decided." As soon as he finished speaking, a large black sword appeared in Dustless's hand. It was exactly the same as the heavenly sword of gathering clouds that Sakura Natsuya had just used. "You're still saying that you don't need it? You're already using it." Tian Songyun's tone was filled with disdain. Just as he was about to mock Dustless before his consciousness disappeared, a black sphere appeared in his right hand. Seeing this, Tian Songyun did not know why, but he suddenly had a bad feeling. Realizing that something was wrong, Tian Songyun trembled and asked, "What are you doing? Why are you asking me?" Dustless curled his lips and mocked, "Idiot, did you grow up eating fodder? This sphere is called the truth-seeking jade. Everything that comes into contact with it will vanish. Do you understand what I'm trying to do?" Could it be? Tian Songyun's heart skipped a beat. He immediately understood Dustless's intention. He roared angrily, "You bastard! Are you trying to destroy the heavenly sword of gathering clouds that you are holding right now? Smart. Too bad there is no reward." Dustless gave him a thumbs up. He was indeed planning to do so. Wasn't it just a heavenly sword of gathering clouds? Wasn't it just an authority? I don't care. Chapter 1481. In any case, destroying the Kusanagi sword was not a big deal. Authority was not that important. For example, Dustless's glint fruit could also be compressed into the Kusanagi sword. How dare this guy? Not only was Tian Songyun shocked, but Liliana and Erica were also petrified. Although they did not know the consequences of Dustless' actions, they were shocked by Dustless' attitude of not caring about divine tools and authority. For example, Marquis Warband had a fanatical pursuit of authority. He did not even hesitate to use rituals to summon disobedient gods. The other godslayers were the same. They had a morbid obsession with authority. And now, Dustless wanted to destroy the Kusanagi sword. Tian Songyan wanted to skin him alive. This was blatant contempt and a slap in the face. I don't believe it. Tian Songyan clenched his teeth. He still felt that Dustless was tricking him. As long as his consciousness dissipated, this guy would definitely shamelessly put away the Kusanagi sword. Then I'll open your eyes. It's just a broken sword. Divine tool my ass. Dustless curled his lips. The others were speechless. This guy's head must have been caught by a door. The so-called divine tool became worthless after coming out of his mouth. Under the gazes of Tian Songyan, Liliana, and Erica, the sharpness of the truth-seeking jade gradually approached the Kusanagi sword. Ka. The black and sharp blade could not withstand the sharpness of the truth-seeking jade. After a short stalemate, it gradually began to peel off, shattering into pieces all over the ground. It really shattered? The three pairs of eyes stared unblinkingly. They could not help but cry out in shock. This guy needs to be taught a lesson. Such a prodigal behavior must be confined. This is not money. He can earn it back if he loses it. What does he think authority is? Erica, who woke up from her shock, stomped her feet. She had been in a daze just now. She only woke up when the Kusanagi sword completely shattered and disappeared. However, it was already too late. The Kusanagi sword would not return. Indeed, it needs to be properly disciplined. That's a divine artifact, not some scrap metal. Liliana nodded in agreement. The destruction of the sky-gathering cloud sword meant that Dustless had given up on this authority. There's nothing to be concerned about. Authority is dispensable to me. Dustless smiled. When he had no power, he had still killed Welslana and Makalto, and Marquis Warban as well. In short, there was no rule stating that the slaying god did not require any so-called authority. Why hasn't he awakened yet? Looking at Hui Na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard, who had fallen to the ground, Dustless frowned slightly. He quickly walked over and saw that the young girl's expression was somewhat pale. Do I need to do CPR? Dustless's appetite was aroused as he stared at those delicate red lips that were like a blooming rose. He would be an idiot if he didn't take advantage of the situation. Moreover, Grace of Clear Autumn Courtyard had already fainted. Aiming at Huina's mouth, Dustless was about to press his lips on it when Erica's ear-piercing voice rang out like a resentful woman. Are you going to turn into a weird uncle? These words made Dustless stop as if he had been electrocuted. He rolled his eyes at Erica in annoyance, and finally gave up on the idea of taking advantage of the situation. Just as he was about to let Erica do CPR for him, Dustless suddenly felt that his lips were both hot and cold. It was soft, as if something was blocking his mouth. He widened his eyes and saw that it was the shy Hui Na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard. King, thank you for saving me. Hui Na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard had two cute little dimples on her face. Her cheeks were red as if she was drunk. How do you plan to compensate her for the sky-gathering cloud sword? That's a divine artifact. Seeing that Dustless and Hui Na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard were glued to each other like honey, Erica was furious. She deliberately emphasized the word divine artifact. Liliana also looked like she was watching a good show. The preciousness of the Kusanagi sword was self-evident. This is indeed a headache. Dustless frowned and was in a dilemma for a moment. He had countless abilities and could barely use them all, but it was impossible for him to give them to others. Moreover, he didn't have the technology to forge weapons. As a knight, how could Hui Na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard not have a sword? By the way, his eyes lit up and fell on the slender blade of the first-generation ghost blade. Dustless smiled and said, If you don't mind, my Tachi will be yours in the future. King, are you sure? Hui Na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard was dizzy and shocked. This long blade was filled with an ancient aura. It was obviously not an ordinary item. The Tachi was not unsheathed for the time being, but the evil aura it emitted was enough to make people's scalp tingle and tremble with fear. Of course. Dustless casually handed the first-generation ghost blade to Hui Na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard and said awkwardly, I used too much strength just now and accidentally broke the Kusanagi sword. Sorry. Erika and Liliana secretly cursed the great swindler. The two of them had seen Dustless destroy the Kusanagi sword with their own eyes. However, the two of them were slightly touched by his magnanimity. Most godslayers treated their subordinates as chess pieces. Liliana deeply understood this. She used to be Marquis Oben's chess piece. If he had a super divine weapon like the first-generation Ghost Blade, Marquis Oben would probably sleep with it in his arms, not to mention giving it away. However, the first-generation Ghost Blade is a little difficult to control. This weapon is very evil, Dustless said solemnly. The first-generation Ghost Blade's previous owners had all died unnatural deaths. We can all see that this is a powerful demonic blade, but it suits me very well. Clear Autumn Courtyard Huey's eyes were like torches, and the first-generation Guiche's unbelievably strong evil chi was daunting. Facing this long blade required a great deal of courage, so taming it was even more difficult. However, Hui Na of the Clear Autumn Courtyard was very interested. As a swordsman, she was most interested in swords. Chapter 1482. Clear Autumn Courtyard Huey's eyes were filled with starlight, and the smile on her face was hard to hide. Her eyes were narrowed into crescent moons. Just as she was about to communicate with Dustless, she found that he had disappeared. A woman's perception is still sharp. Dustless's mouth twitched wildly. Erika immediately noticed Clear Autumn Courtyard Huey's intentions, and pulled Dustless away from her at an incredible speed. Her speed was so fast that even Dustless was stunned for a moment. Good blade. After observing for a while, Clear Autumn Courtyard Hui nodded and stroked the first-generation Ghost Blade's simple blade. It would let out a burst of cold screams, giving people the illusion of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Not only that, the first-generation Ghost Blade's surface also erupted with a demonic light to resist Clear Autumn Courtyard Hui. This blade is the first-generation Ghost Blade, an out-and-out demonic blade. It can rival and even surpass your Heaven-Gathering Cloud Sword. It will take time to tame it, so take it slow. Dustless cautioned. The first-generation Ghost Blade was snatched from the 5 honored stars. He had no problem controlling it, but ordinary people would die tragically if they encountered the first-generation Ghost Blade. However, at this moment, Clear Autumn Courtyard Hui seemed to be possessed. She turned a deaf ear to Dustless's words, and stroked the first-generation Ghost Blade back and forth like a sun closer than her own sun. Buzz buzz buzz. The first-generation Ghost Blade let out a burst of clear cries and a large demonic light, continuing to resist Clear Autumn Courtyard Huey's touch. After all, it had only one master, Dustless. Good blade. The more the first-generation Ghost Blade resisted, the more pleased Clear Autumn Courtyard Hui became. The divine blade had a spirit. For the first-generation Ghost Blade to be so human-like, it indirectly showed that it was not a fish in a pond. Its surging demonic power was abnormal to the extreme. Compared to Clear Autumn Courtyard Huey's Heaven-Gathering Cloud Sword, the first-generation Ghost Blade was obviously more difficult to control. After all, this was a demonic blade, an evil existence that could rival the Heaven-Gathering Cloud Sword. It was not easy to control it. Let's go back for now. Dustless patted Clear Autumn Courtyard Huey's shoulder. Since first-generation Guiche had gifted it to Clear Autumn Courtyard Hui Na, Dustless wouldn't ask for it back. He had too many weapons in his possession, and the number of swords and blades was even greater. For example, Captain Yamamoto's Zanpakuto, Ryujin Jaka, is currently under the control of Dustless. Moreover, after the first time, Terumi Kayamoto is also one of his own people, so this deal is not a loss for him. How generous of you, Erika said in a sour tone. Although Liliana did not say anything, her eyes were full of resentment. The two women were so jealous that the smell of vinegar was everywhere. She and Erika had been admiring Dustless for far longer than Hui Na of the Blue Autumn Courtyard, but they had not received a single valuable gift. Cough cough cough. Dustless was embarrassed. Sometimes, it was difficult to be impartial. Time to go back. As if nothing had happened just now, Erica's smile was as beautiful as a spring breeze. She wasn't an unreasonable person, so after complaining for a while, she felt relieved. It was Dustless's fault for destroying someone else's artifact. That's true. Dustless nodded slightly, and a strange look flashed in his eyes. He hoped that Métis did not do anything to Athena. In Shizuka Kusunagi's house, as usual, everyone went to work and school, but the room that was usually warm was now cold and piercing, and filled with a different kind of oppression. Where did Athena go? The girl asked in a cold and arrogant tone. She was sitting on the sofa, looking down at the two people opposite her with a slight smile on her face. Wanli Yoli and Shizuka Kusunagi, who were tied up, were terrified. After Athena pledged her allegiance to Dustless, her relationship with the other girls was pretty good. This Athena was different from the previous Athena. She was cold, like an evil spirit running out of hell, and her whole body was filled with a bone-piercing chill. This person was Métis. I don't know. Wanli Yoli and Shizuka Kusunagi gritted their teeth. Aye. As expected of that guy's companion. Your sincere feelings are admirable, but you two are still young. Haven't you lived long enough? Do you still miss this beautiful world? If you refuse to answer me, you will die. Métis used both kindness and power, and at the same time released his divine power. It's so cold. Wanli Yoli and Shizuka Kusunagi shivered. Both of them were ordinary humans. Although Wanli Yoli was a witch, she was not suitable for fighting, so she could not resist Métis's power. Boom boom boom. At this moment, there was a sudden explosion in the room, followed by a ray of warm light that shone on Wanli Yoli and Shizuka Kusunagi. The two girls felt better. Athena? Métis raised his head and found that the room was penetrated, and a face came into view. You came at the right time. It's time for us to become one. Without saying much, Métis's eyes were filled with ambition. This was the best opportunity. If Dustless came back, he would have to retreat again. You want to use them to threaten me? You are getting more and more despicable. Athena was expressionless, as if she was talking about something insignificant. However, deep in her eyes, there was a flash of disappointment and loneliness. Threaten? What a joke. As a god, why would I threaten you with mere humans? Don't compare me with those scumbags. Métis showed a disapproving look. Although her heart was distorted by the flames of revenge, there were some things that she had her bottom line. This time, she was only looking for Athena to fight. After dealing with Athena and recovering to her peak, she would look for Dustless to settle the score. As for the matter of devouring the sky and destroying the world, she suddenly felt that it was not important. She had to get rid of Dustless as soon as possible. Otherwise, sooner or later, she would be traumatized. Chapter 1483. Athena stared at Mortis with a complicated gaze. To be honest, she really did not want to fight with Mortis. After all, their relationship was understandable. After we become one, I will settle the score with your lover. Mortis gritted his teeth. He did not have a good impression of Dustless and could only blame him. A good plan had been ruined by that cheater. You want to deal with him? Athena's eyebrows relaxed. After hearing Mortis's true intention, Athena calmed down. The situation was one-sided anyway. It doesn't matter if you devour him. Athena suddenly smiled. Although it's a little troublesome, the result is the same. I'm still the same person. You. Hearing this, Mortis's mouth twitched violently. What Athena meant was, even if you devour me, you will still be turned over by Dustless. Let them go first. Athena pointed at Wanli Yoli and Shizuka Kusunagi. Let them go, and I'll be willing to be devoured by you. Mortis's eyes were filled with killing intent. When he heard Athena's words, he did not feel happy. Instead, his anger surged. Athena was clearly looking down on him. Athena wanted to express that no matter what happened in the end, the winner would be Dustless. Even if she was devoured now, it would not be an exception. Disappear before I change my mind. Athena glanced at Wanli Yoli and Shizuka Kusunagi coldly. Looking at Mortis's ferocious expression, she was quite upset by Athena's words. His twisted face was even scarier, and his body was filled with deadly pressure. But what about you? Wanli Yuli looked at Athena worriedly. She was still fine, but Shizuka Kusanagi had already fainted. Being in close contact with a god, Wanli Yuli was barely better, but Shizuka Kusanagi had already fainted. Don't you trust that guy? Athena asked calmly, her eyes shining with a strange light. At first, Athena did not intend to be devoured by Mortis. When the two of them fought, Athena was naturally not afraid of Mortis. However, she soon changed her mind. To be honest, I also want to see how strong he is. That guy was very powerful. He was not a god, but it was impossible to say that he was a human. When did humans become so powerful? He is a godslayer, but he never uses the power of a god. The gods that he has defeated so far have all relied on his own strength. Athena said expectantly. In other words, you want to use me? Métis felt as if he had just swallowed a fly. Even though Athena was willing to be devoured and she was happy about it, Métis could not hurt her like this. He was using Modis as a tool to fight with Dustless. According to Dustless's personality, he would definitely rescue Athena in the end, and she would be fine. On the other hand, Métis was destined for tragedy. Don't regret it. After glaring fiercely at Athena, Métis finally pounced over and violently covered Athena's mouth. There was no doubt that he wanted to devour her. Damn it, even if you are a traitor, you can't do this. Dustless, who was in the dark, was speechless. He was watching every move of Athena and Métis. Towards this pair of mother and daughter who were in cahoots with each other, an unrealistic thought in his heart became more and more impulsive. Let's wait and see. Dustless leaned against the wall leisurely, quietly waiting for the two to merge. Killing Métis would be too easy for the two of you. Athena is my servant, so her mother will also become my servant. This mother-daughter combination is very good. Dustless was secretly pleased with himself as the corner of his mouth curled up in a sinister arc. You two idiots, actually, I can't wait for you to do this. He glanced back at Métis, who was gradually merging into one. The unbelievably huge divine power swept through the world, and the cloudless blue sky dimmed. It was replaced by a cold darkness. Athena was gradually disappearing, and a brand new Métis was slowly forming. Even though he could interfere with their happy occasion, Dustless wisely chose to ignore it. I've always wanted to add Métis to my servant team, but I didn't have a good opportunity. This time you've helped me, Athena. Dustless's sinister smile became even more pronounced. There was no reason for him to keep Métis like a bandit. It was obviously impossible for him to be a servant who could do anything he wanted. There was no suitable excuse. However, it was different now. Métis had recovered to his peak, and would definitely come to take revenge on Dustless. After defeating her, Athena would also be speechless if he kept her by his side. Athena had no right to interfere with how the victor would be captured. Has it finally stopped? Dustless looked up slightly and realized that the huge commotion had suddenly stopped. He looked up and saw that the two figures had completely disappeared. Are you still sneaking around there? Dustless. A majestic roar entered his ears. Dustless frowned slightly and looked over. Métis, who had recovered to his peak, was staring at him arrogantly. No wonder you're so arrogant and confident. This form is indeed very strong. Dustless nodded slightly. Before Métis had merged with Athena, he couldn't detect his presence. After the two of them merged, he immediately ascended to the sky and discovered Dustless hiding in the dark, as if he had eyes in the sky. You've become stronger, but your tolerance has become smaller. Don't come and kill me, I'm so scared. Although he said that, Dustless's face was full of provocation. He curled his finger and looked at Métis with an expression that said, "Come and hit me if you dare." It was extremely annoying. Chapter 1484. Mortis was covered in a layer of black fog. She gritted her teeth and glared at this B*****starred. She cursed in her heart, "Don't be so cocky. Will you die? Cut the crap. I want to see how strong you are." It was rare for Mortis to talk nonsense. Her bickering skills were too weak. Even if 100 of her joined forces, they would not be a match for Dustless. Boom, boom, boom. Black light exploded, and a tornado swept over. Dustless frowned. He was as calm as a rock as he stared at the wind and waves in front of him. The black tornado was quite powerful. It destroyed all the surrounding buildings. A trick to please the crowd. Dustless shook his head in disdain. He completely ignored the existence of the black tornado. Although it was powerful, it was just a trick to him. The tornado crushed Dustless's body, but it would heal again. It was useless. His expression did not change, and he continued to stare at Athena with a contemptuous look. Be my servant. Dustless stroked his chin and smiled. Métisse's eyes were spitting fire as she glared at Wu Chun. Her face was bright red. She was about to explode from Wu Chen's words. Who was she? Mortis. She was a true god. Although Dustless was a god slayer, he was still a human. At most, he was a slightly stronger human. You want me to be your servant? Aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning when you're talking? Mortis's spittle flew all over the place as he cursed in his heart. In anger, she waved her slender hand gently. The giant pythons in the sky poured down. Their bloody mouths were locked on Dustless. If they were not careful, they would be torn apart. I will be struck by lightning? Who dares to strike me? Hearing this, Dustless didn't get angry. His tone was calm and indifferent. Although he wasn't a god and didn't have the so-called godhead, after experiencing several worlds in succession, countless gods had died in his hands. Even if he wasn't a god, Dustless's strength was far beyond that of a god. In his opinion, she should kneel down and be grateful that he was willing to let go of his means to recruit Modis as his servant. The so-called god of disobedience, to put it bluntly, was nothing more than a stray dog. In Dustless's words, I was kind enough to give you a warm home. Not only are you not grateful, but you also want to tear down my home. How dare you? Boom, boom, boom. Dustless didn't dodge, so the pythons that filled the sky tore him to pieces, scattering his body parts all over the ground. That's all you've got. I really don't understand why Athena thinks so highly of you. Métis raised his nose arrogantly, looking as if he was invincible. Swish, 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 swish. A sharp sound suddenly came from behind. Métis was shocked. The sky suddenly became abnormally hot, and the water and blood in her body evaporated at an accelerated rate. After a moment of shock, Métis instinctively retreated. Fast reaction. Dustless, who was holding the red blade, nodded slightly and gave her a look of praise. That weapon of yours. Staring at the Tachi in Dustless's hand with fear, Métis couldn't keep calm. She felt the water in her body evaporating rapidly, and her blood also disappeared mysteriously. If this continued, she would be finished sooner or later. This blade is called Zankafire Tachi. I have already suppressed its power to the minimum, but now it seems that it's still a little dangerous. Dustless muttered to himself. Looking around the moment he took out Zankafire Tachi, the surrounding environment immediately changed. The green trees were evaporated and turned into dead wood. The lake in the distance was bubbling strangely. Due to the high temperature, it was also slowly evaporating. Not only that, all life forms could feel the water in their body quickly disappearing. This B** starred still has such a trump card. Métis was shocked. She could feel the changes in her surroundings, and naturally knew that he wasn't lying. All life forms with water in their body could feel the blood in their body disappearing at an accelerated rate. Dustless didn't even need to do anything. He only needed to hold Zankafire Tachi for a short while, and the people in this city would all die. Don't look at me with such an incredulous expression. I know you're the kind of person who won't cry until you see the coffin. So if you don't show your corpse a little, you won't turn back and be saved, Dustless said with an extremely serious tone. Turn back and be saved? You're talking as if you're a Buddha who helps the world. Métis's face darkened. She felt the same as Dustless. That wasn't turning back and be saved, it was becoming a demon. However, I can't deny that this guy does indeed have authority that surpasses me. It's not the so-called authority. This seems to be his own strength. Damn it, when did humans become so perverted? Métis slandered in her heart. In terms of strength, she reluctantly acknowledged Dustless. Men are all bad things. Thinking of her painful experience, Métis's compassion instantly disappeared. Her gaze was as sharp as a blade. Don't think that everyone is a heartless person like Zeus, the sky god, Dustless refuted. He couldn't possibly kill everyone with the same brush. And for all the same, I'm not like Athena, who would throw herself into your arms like an infatuated girl after being tricked by your sweet words, Métis said coldly. In the end, you still want to force me to make a move, Dustless sighed softly. The gentleness in his eyes was restrained, and he swung Zanka Fire Tachi with a biting cold slash. Zanka Fire Tachi North, ashes of heaven and earth. A huge blade appeared at the tip of the blade. Métis, who sensed the danger, didn't want to give up. He summoned a large number of pythons to resist, but everything that came into contact with the blade instantly turned into ashes. Chapter 1485. Métis panicked and realized the danger of the blade aura. Her heart skipped a beat, and her blood flowed faster. Even her breathing became more and more difficult. Damn pervert. Métis cursed and decisively took a detour. Even though she felt a little aggrieved. What was a moment of humiliation compared to her life? Besides, she was just looking for a better and more suitable opportunity to take revenge on Dustless. Aren't you a god? Stepping on the void, Dustless chased while asking. If you keep dodging, let alone defeating me, you won't even be able to touch my body. Now you're like a mouse, hiding from place to place. Hearing that, Métis was furious. She raised her hands and feet, and black light surged. Roar! 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 In an instant, countless giant pythons appeared, all of them opening their fangs and biting at Dustless. Their several 100-meter-long bodies made people feel despair when they moved. It's useless. Shaking his head slightly, Dustless faced it calmly. A large amount of golden flames flowed out of his body and quickly spread, covering his entire body in the blink of an eye. Zenfire Tachi West, Broken Sun Prison Garment. The golden flames covered Dustless's entire body. The light was extremely dazzling, and the water in the atmosphere evaporated rapidly, giving people the illusion that he was advancing with the sun and was unstoppable. Roar! 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 The thick black python that approached Dustless roared again. It was different from the valiant and arrogant cry just now. This time, it was filled with endless sorrow. Before it came into contact with Dustless's body, the Broken Sun Prison Garment emitted flames of more than 15 million degrees that evaporated everything. Damn it! How can I fight like this? Seeing that, the corner of Métis's mouth twitched violently. A sense of sorrow spread throughout her body. She had a splitting headache, and she couldn't help but exclaim in her heart. Where did this guy come from? The temperature of 15 million degrees Celsius was enough to crush everything. Any attack would be reduced to ashes under this terrifying temperature. Métis calmed herself down and counted the moves Dustless had used so far. She couldn't help but feel conflicted. Even the god of disobedience didn't seem to have as many abilities as he did. Including all things in the world, there were too many to count. He often gave people the misconception that there was nothing he couldn't do. Right, let me see what makes you different from the rest. She narrowed her eyes. Since Métis had devoured Athena, he could naturally use her abilities as well. Now the two of them were one. In fact, the current Métis was even stronger than Athena. The most intelligent goddess of wisdom, Métis, Athena, had the ability to see through the other party's personality and divine power. Therefore, everything about Dustless in the past was exposed in front of Mortis. You will regret it, Dustless said as if he had sensed Athena's intention. It has to be said that Mortis's ability is quite good. Just like Dustless's Rinnegan can extract other people's memories, this ability has the same effect. A few seconds later, everything about Dustless in the past appeared in Mortis's eyes. Under normal circumstances, knowing the enemy's trump card can reach the state of knowing oneself and the enemy, but there are no absolutes, and there are always exceptions. Dustless is an exception. After knowing Dustless's past, she thought that she would be happy. After all, It was very likely that she would find Dustless's unknown weakness. However, with a long face, Métis quickly realized that he was gravely mistaken. Yo! After a while, Dustless greeted her with a chuckle, touched his chin and asked expectantly, "Have you found my weakness? How could you have such an incredible experience? Are you kidding me?" Mortis regretted it. She had hoped to find Dustless's weakness and gain some advantages. Who would have thought that after seeing through everything about Dustless, she would become more desperate and shocked? The more you know, the more unlucky you are. The weirdo in front of her, who always had a cynical smile at the corner of his mouth, was a perverted existence that was enough to make her jaw drop. Compared to the so-called god, he was even worse. In short, Mortis's high fighting spirit was hit hard, and she fell from the clouds to the deep sea, and her heart was filled with an indescribable sense of powerlessness. Immortal body, eternal and infinite energy, eyes that can create and destroy the world, weapons that can destroy the world, and the experience of killing countless gods. And Mortis was stunned. She didn't see any hope, but her heart was full of despair. For a long time, as a god of the Trinity, she felt very proud, but Dustless's abilities were summed up. Although there was no so-called godhood, it was not an exaggeration to say that he was an omnipotent god. It seemed that there was nothing he didn't know or didn't understand. "Do you feel despair?" Dustless said very unscrupulously, with a sloppy expression on his face. "As you see, I really don't belong to this world. As for strength," Dustless scratched his head. How many years had it been since he met a competent opponent? "But this is good too. Knowing my origin, do you still intend to fight against me?" Dustless asked with interest. "You should know that no matter how hard you work and encourage yourself, you are no match for me. The gap between us is too big. A baby in swaddling clothes is just a happy agent to adjust the boring life of a towering giant." Hearing this, Mortis was speechless. This time she didn't fight back like before but calmed down. It couldn't be helped. This was the truth. "Do I really have to be his servant like Athena?" Mortis gritted her teeth unwillingly. At this moment, the situation was stronger than her, and she had no choice but to bow down. She didn't have the strength to shake Dustless at the moment, and it seemed that she could only follow the arrangement. You're tuning into the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.